Madam Mayor, recording has begun.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I would like to officially call this meeting to order. Director Phipps, could you please do a roll call?
Certainly, Madam Mayor. Mayor James,
Here.
Councilman Goldsmith,
Here.
Councilman Trollinger,
Present.
Councilwoman Bryant-Ward,
Present.
Councilman Jenkins.
Here.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. If you all would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Council, if you have had a little peek at our meeting agenda today, if it is presentable, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we accept the April 25th, 2023 meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the approval of the April 18th minutes. If you all have had an opportunity to look at it, I will entertain a motion to accept it as presented.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the April 18th, 2023 meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to our proclamations. This month, we do have two proclamations. We have National Stroke Awareness Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. So I will read a little bit about National Stroke Awareness Month, and then I will have Councilwoman Bryant-Ward read the proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month. So, whereas stroke is consistently the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, the 3rd leading cause of death in the state of Maryland, and the 5th leading cause of death in Charles County. And whereas there are life-saving treatments that must be administered within 3 to 4.5 hours once symptoms begin, only a very small percentage of patients get to the hospital within the treatment window due to the public's inability to recognize the onset of stroke-like symptoms or the importance of calling 911 immediately. And whereas to help educate the community about the signs of stroke, the town of La Plata will serve as a model for other communities, cities, counties, and states, as well as the nation, by posting stroke education in the area of stroke awareness, prevention, and recognition in all its government buildings and on its town website. The town will further allow stroke educational opportunities during public events whenever feasible to increase the public's awareness of how to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. Whereas the goal is to educate everyone in the town of La Plata about stroke recognition and the importance of dialing 911 immediately. Businesses, civic organizations, senior communities, faith-based organizations, and residents will be encouraged to participate and contribute to the Stroke Smart, Spot a Stroke, Stop a Stroke, Save a Life campaign through active citizenship efforts. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, do recognize the month of May 2023 as National Stroke Awareness Month and encourage all of our citizens to make every effort to learn how to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. And it is signed by our council, myself, Mayor Jeanine James, Councilman Goldsmith, Councilman Trollinger, Councilwoman Bryant-Ward, and Councilman Jenkins. And I must say that we are proud to be Maryland's first stroke smart city. And we are making every effort to educate our community on how to recognize a stroke. So we will have a presentation in just a bit to kind of put this all together. So that just know next month, in just a couple days, it is National Stroke Awareness Month. With that, moving on to Councilwoman Bryant-Ward, where she will read a proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor James. The Town of La Plata Proclamation Mental Health Awareness Month, May 2023. Whereas mental health is important for our individual well-being and vitality, as well as that of our families, communities, and businesses. And whereas 1 in 5 Americans experience a mental health illness that requires treatment at some point in their lives, and 1 in 10 children has a serious emotional disturbance that, if untreated, can lead to school failure, physical illness, substance use, jail, and even suicide. And whereas stigma and stereotypes associated with mental health illnesses often keep people from seeking treatment that could improve their quality of life. And whereas mental health is a biological based brain disorder that cannot be overcome through willpower, and it is not related to a defect in a person's character or intelligence. And whereas a mental health recovery is a journey of healing and transformation, enabling people with a mental illness to live in a community of his and her choice while striving to achieve his or her full potential. And whereas a mental health recovery not only benefits individuals with mental health disorders by focusing on their abilities to live, work, learn, and fully participate and contribute to our society, but also enriches the culture of our community life. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, do recognize the month of May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month and encourage our citizens, public and private institutions, and businesses to commit to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health illness and the need for appropriate, accessible services for all people with mental health illnesses to promote recovery. This is signed by the Council, the Town of La Plata, Jeanine E. James, Mayor, James Goldsmith, Councilman, Matthew D. Trollinger, Councilman, Evelyn Bryant-Ward, Councilwoman, David M. Jenkins, Councilman.
Thank you so much. That is a very important way that we need to recognize mental health. And we have that whole month to really drill down on some of the recognitions there. So thank you for reading that. I appreciate that. All right, next on our agenda is the swearing in of a new officer. So Chief, come on down. I'm going to let you lead first and then I'll come there.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to introduce Ronald Estoque to you. Officer Estoque completes comparative compliance at the Prince George's Community College Police Academy on Friday. Officer Estoque began his career in law enforcement as a civilian police officer with the Department of the Navy on Indian Head, and he served there between 2008 and 2021. He rose to the ranks, through the ranks to the position of corporal. Officer Estoque departed Indian Head for the Arlington County Sheriff's Office. He graduated from the Northern Virginia Criminal Justice Training Academy in December of 2021. He worked there briefly, but had a desire to work for a more traditional full-service law enforcement agency. Officer Estoque and his wife are longtime active members of the Prince Frederick Rescue Squad. He holds a CDL. Bobby, don't try to recruit him. And he's a driving instructor for the Southern Maryland Driving Academy. Upon completion of comparative compliance this Friday, he will begin field training with one of our senior officers. So we are more than happy to have Officer Estoque join our ranks and the experience he brings with us.
Wonderful. Well, let's swear him in before he's recruited by Bobby. There you go. Are you ready for this? And as you're turning back from three, that's raise your right hand, please. I, Ronald Estoque,
I, Ronald Estoque,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do swear I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality and prejudice,
execute the duties of police officer of the town of La Plata
will execute the duties of police officer for the town of La Plata
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations and welcome.
I'm looking forward to serving the town of La Plata. That's it.
Well, congratulations and welcome aboard.
Like to have you on the team.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce any of these people? Because I don't know a lot of these that are here.
This is my wife Jenny, my daughter Sarah, my son RJ.
Very proud of you. So we're welcome him with open arms. Chief, I will. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for dinner or something. Thank you.
Okay, now my friend, neighbor, and the head of the Stroke Smart campaign is Shellee Stine. It's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody? Okay. So tonight we're here in honor of May being National Stroke Month, and we're going to talk about stroke awareness, stroke prevention, and stroke education. Go ahead with the next slide. So stroke education, prevention, and early recognition is a community involvement activity. It takes everyone in a community in order to make an impact when it comes to stroke. We can work hard to educate, but if someone's stroke goes unrecognized because we haven't gotten to everyone, then it impacts our entire community, one person at a time. Our first responders, our hospital, our community members, our business leaders, everyone is responsible and encouraged to learn how to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. Together, we can make a difference. Next. Facts about stroke. Strokes account for about 1 in every 19 deaths. Strokes are the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, the 3rd leading cause of death in the state of Maryland, the 5th leading cause of death in Charles County. Strokes are the leading cause of severe long-term disability overall, and strokes occur in every racial grouping, but the African American population does have the largest number of strokes in comparison. More women than men have strokes every year, and although strokes typically affect those over the age of 65, strokes can and do occur at any age, even in children. We're seeing strokes as young as 22 years old at the hospital. So it can happen at any time. Next slide. So on February 22nd, 2022, the town of La Plata declared themselves a stroke smart community. And what this did was open the avenue for an increase in stroke education for our citizens so that everyone in the town of La Plata had the opportunity to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. They had access to materials through the website. There's a tab on the town of La Plata website that accesses stroke smart materials. There's stroke smart materials at the town hall, and we attended a number of community events. Next slide. So we attended the Shamrock 5K, the La Plata bed race. We did senior center visits, and we got to enjoy, but we also participated with education in several of the town hall concerts. And I want to commend the La Plata Police Department because they actively assisted us in getting stroke education out to our citizens through their Coffee with a Cop activity all last year. They were able to take our magnets and do education through different senior centers in different communities and teach how to spot a stroke. So thank you to the town of La Plata Police because we couldn't have reached as many people without you. Next slide. So what can we do in our community in order to prevent, recognize, and stop a stroke? We need to learn how to become stroke smart. So what does that entail? It entails learning what a stroke is. It entails learning how to spot a stroke, and it entails learning that a stroke is a medical emergency. Next slide. So what exactly is a stroke? A stroke is a sudden death of brain cells due to a lack of oxygen caused by a blockage in the blood flow to the brain. Or sometimes it's caused by a rupture in an artery that's leading to the brain and leading to the tissue of the brain, and it leads to tissue death. Stroke can cause lasting brain damage, long-term disability, and even death. Next slide. So what can we do about it? Everyone should learn how to spot a stroke. And the mnemonic Be Fast is one of the easiest ways and one of the easiest ways to remember how to spot a stroke. So B stands for balance. It's a loss of balance, a headache, and dizziness. And not ordinary dizziness, the dizziness that causes like a room spinning sensation. E stands for eyes, which is vision. So it can be the loss of vision in one eye or both eyes. It could be double vision. It can actually be blurred vision. Sudden onset of visual problems is a medical emergency and can be the sign of a stroke. F stands for face. If someone's face, when you ask them to smile, is uneven, they could be having a stroke. If you're looking at a loved one and suddenly they look like they have a facial droop, this could be a sign of a stroke. A stands for arm weakness, but it also stands for leg weakness. And normally the weakness is on one side of the body. S stands for speech. And this is difficulty not only talking, but also difficulty understanding speech. It could be one or the other, or it could be both. And T stands for time to call 911. A person doesn't have to have all of those symptoms to have a stroke. They only need to be recognized as having one of those symptoms for them to be a potential stroke. So we don't want people to delay. We want them to call 911. Next slide. So a stroke is a medical emergency. When stroke symptoms are seen, we want people to immediately call 911. We don't want people jumping in the car and coming to the hospital. People that come to the hospital by 911 for a stroke, research says that they do better than people that drive themselves to the hospital. 90% of the strokes can be treated with either a clot busting medication or through surgery, but the patient has to get to the hospital in time. Time equals brain. 1.9 million brain cells die every minute that a stroke goes untreated. Don't hesitate if a stroke is suspected. Be fast. Calling 911 gets your treatment started right away. Next slide. In 2022, Charles Regional Medical Center saw 218 patients that they diagnosed with a stroke. Of those 218, 37 were treated with clot-busting medications in order to stop their stroke, and 18 of them were transferred to a tertiary care center and had a procedure called a thrombectomy, in which they go in with a catheter and they actually pull the clot out. And so 18 people were able to be transferred to help stop their stroke. But when you look at the fact that we diagnosed 218 patients with a stroke, but we only were able to give that medicine to 37 people and only able to send 18 people out for a procedure that is life altering. If you look at the chart below, I know it's a little hard to read, but towards the beginning of the earlier times that people come to the hospital for stroke, within that 3 to 4 hour window. If you look towards the end of the slide, you'll see that one big tall red line there. That is at 9 hours and greater. And the majority of our patients are still coming to the hospital 9 hours or greater after their stroke has started. And we want to impact that. Our whole goal with Stroke Smart is to get people to realize that they're having a stroke and come to the hospital to give themselves the opportunity to be considered for the medicine or possibly for surgical treatment. Next slide. So what can we do? Being Stroke Smart is a community effort. It takes everyone. Always remember to be fast to spot a stroke. Call 911 immediately if a stroke is suspected. You too can become a stroke hero and pass your knowledge on to others. Let's make it our goal to educate everyone in La Plata. We want everyone to know how to spot a stroke, how to stop a stroke, and how to save a life. If you want more information on how you too can be involved or you can be involved to become a stroke hero or have Stroke Smart education presented at a meeting or an event that you're holding, please contact me at 301-609-4306. My name is Shellee Stine and I'm the stroke coordinator, and we can make arrangements to get your event covered or to get you education or even just educational materials. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Well, don't go anywhere yet. I have a question for you. Actually, it's a request. Could you please share with us the story of how, especially Virginia is now a bunch of stroke smart cities and counties. Can you tell us the story of how it was formed?
Yes.
I thought that was a beautiful story.
So there's a gentleman who lives in Virginia. His name is Alan Stillman. And Alan Stillman's life was drastically altered as a young boy by stroke. He and his mother both lived with his grandmother, and his grandmother had a stroke that went unrecognized. And his mother had some mental health issues, and it took her days to recognize that his grandmother was suffering from a stroke. And it was a stroke so devastating that it eventually took his grandmother's life. His mother, Alan's mother, couldn't deal with the grief that she felt and the guilt that she felt because she didn't recognize her mother's emergency, and she took her own life, which left Alan to be an orphan, and he went through foster care. And as he grew up, he developed his own company and worked with the military and did a lot of things as far as trying to find the easiest, quickest steps to accomplish something. And one of the things that he did, because it meant something to him, was help come up with an easy way that's very similar to Be Fast in how to spot a stroke. It's like a 3-step thing. It's how to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. And he has made it his business, because he is a resident of Virginia, to get not only the state of Virginia to be stroke smart and get education out there, but all the little towns, municipalities, towards everyone in the state of Virginia becoming stroke smart. Now, in the state of Maryland, we are doing very data. We have the city of Westchester, we have Carroll County. That PG County has declared itself stroke smart, And last year, Governor Hogan has signed a declaration, a proclamation to make Maryland a stroke smart state. And, feeding off of that, a group that I belong to that has 50 stroke coordinators from across the state of Maryland. We have been working with the emergency medical services to create a statewide video on Maryland Stroke Smart. It should be released in May. It's going to have a lot of Charles County in it compared to some of the other counties. I'm very proud of that. We have 2 medics in our county who are going to be in the video and one of our dispatchers from the EMS dispatch that's going to be in the video. And then they took different places across the state, different hospitals, different EMS. They're teaching Be Fast. They have different neurologists talking about the importance of stroke. Even our governor, Wes Moore, has a statement in the beginning about how to spot a stroke, stop a stroke, and save a life. And the video, when it's released, it's about 7 minutes long, and we're hoping that it'll be picked up by the news and we can use it locally and just get the word out there so that Maryland can become like Virginia and be stroke smart and protect our residents too.
And you'll be at our Celebrate La Plata again?
Oh, yes, I will be there, and I will have our magnets and education. We'll be doing blood pressure screening. We will be having diabetic education and hypertension education. So we'll be addressing a lot of the risk factors that lead up to stroke.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
It's a
welcome.
story of tragedy, but you know what?
Yeah.
Something wonderful came out of that. Do I have any, go ahead.
Thank you.
Councilman Bacon.
Just a real quick anecdotal story. My late father-in-law in New Jersey was sitting at the kitchen table, and his son-in-law, who was an EMT, he started having a stroke because his face got uneven. They called 911. They got him real quick, and en route, they diverted him to a hospital that specializes in stroke. So when he got to the emergency room, they were ready for him. No waiting. Boom, he went in, and he survived and did very, very well for a number of years beyond that. So thank you again for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that he got the time that he got. So
We just have to start letting the young residents know
Yes.
how to start to recognize a stroke. So
yes.
that is our effort. Good. Thank you so
Thank
much. I
you.
appreciate it. And we do have your proclamation too. That is signed. Oh, there we go.
We have
Good, good.
signed in. We have not all signed in.
To speak.
Just to-
Oh, no, you don't have to sign it to be president. This was just for speakers.
Unless you want to speak and you know you are more than welcome to speak. I love hearing you. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We are on to public comment and I do have a few, I have just one speaker. Just one speaker tonight, Maggie? Come on. If you could state your name, whether you live within the incorporated town limits and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, we would appreciate that.
We'll work on that.
All right. The floor is yours.
Okay, my name's Maggie Larrick and I do live here in La Plata. I live right over in Eland Station. I find it really interesting that we're now a stroke smart community after what I heard today over at the county commissioner's office in terms of the fact that the county has a woefully inadequate EMS staff at the moment. The EMS staff was there giving their budget and letting the county commissioners know how many more ambulances and how many more EMTs and how many more paramedics they need. They did a very nice presentation, and I would encourage all the council members to please review the videotape from today. It probably starts at about an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes into the commissioners' meeting, but they gave an example of a day in November where at one point during that day, the county had 2 ambulances to cover the entire county. And the only reason that there were 2 ambulances available was because there happened to be that day 2 volunteer ambulance crews available. They moved ambulances around, trying to position them in heavily populated areas or centralize them or whatever. So I just want to encourage you. I mean, I know that the town of La Plata is issuing building permits at a rapid pace. Slow it down. You don't have enough adequate EMS to take care of the people you have now. And it's only going to get worse until they get caught up. And like I said, they did ask for more money for ambulances and EMS people and paid EMS, paid paramedics, more training, more encouragement for volunteers to become EMS folks. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else that didn't sign up that? Come on, we'll get you to sign up at the end. State your name, whether you live in the incorporated town limits, and keep it to 3 minutes if you could, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Glendora Rogers. I reside over off of Calmia Court. First, I'd like to say thank you for the assistance that was given to us with the trees that were cut down, that were bordering and over into our property line that is there. However, we're still having some issues with the diseased trees in the common area. Over the past weekend, with the storm that came through on Saturday, a tree did fall down over our mailbox, our cluster mailbox, and it was in a common area. The same area was hit in January with branches from that tree that fell down on the residents' vehicle, which caused them to have to replace their vehicle. They replaced it, and then the storm came again this weekend and damaged her new vehicle. You know, she's a young single mom with little kids. So our hope is that someone can come out, or we can get a landscaper, horticulturist to look at some of the other overgrown trees. We're not asking that they be cut down, but trimmed so that the dead branches, some are split and hanging, can be addressed. Also, we're having a very huge issue with visitor parking. We had asked the past couple of years if there were funds available for the common area in front of 121 and the grassy area. That area is not being utilized. We would like to see if it's possible to try to flatten that area and make some additional visitor parking. When you have an extra guest, if we're looking at maybe 2 cars per household. If you have an extra guest or you want to do something as a family unit, there's no parking available. Maybe we can talk with or see if La Plata Mill, or if maybe parts of social services can be utilized for our overflow. We're just really in need of extra parking instead of parking on the sideline, which I know is not a good thing to do, especially if we have an emergency in the area. Also, there is a mailbox, the mailbox that the tree fell over. Is it possible we have a unit there that has a food truck? It blocks our mailbox, and a lot of us get in after hours, and we're wondering if there's a light that can be put up somewhere there, or if the inspector can come by and reevaluate moving or having that homeowner move that food truck that blocks our cluster mailbox so that we feel protected going to our mailbox area.
Thank you very much. I will pass this information along to our town manager, who is listening and taking notes, but I really appreciate you coming in and letting us know about this. You know, sometimes emails get shuffled around. It's so much more powerful to have you here. And I will make sure that the town manager has this information and addresses it as he is, whatever is in his purview.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. It's good seeing you.
You too.
We can clap on that. Anybody else? It is so nice to see you all. Yes, there. Now, why aren't you here every Tuesday? We would love to see you.
Is it every
Well, it's the second, third, and fourth Tuesdays of the month, but the first Tuesday of the month is the planning commission. So if you don't have anything to do on a Tuesday, which it seems you don't, come visit us. We'd love to see you. But thank you for being great residents. We really appreciate it. All right, moving on to our monthly reports. Chief, you're up first.
Any questions?
I'm going to start off real quick and then open it up to everyone. Congratulations on being selected for the CLIA delegate. That is awesome to have one of our own on that. I know how passionate you are about CLIA, and you do a fabulous job, not only for our town, but for the whole organization on CLIA. So that was exciting. And the only question I have, and then I'll open it up for the council, is do you have any update on a possible police department?
Mr. Manuel and I spoke about that this evening. So I believe you'll be hearing from us at the first meeting in May.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that is
I
wonderful.
I think we have an action plan.
Thank you. Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilwoman Bryant-Ward, Ward 3. Chief, so looking at the calls for service comparison 21 to 2023, in January, February, March of 21 and 22, the calls were up, they went down, they went up. Then in 2023, the calls were up, they went down, they went down. Do we anticipate that to be a trend, or can you identify what may have made that happen?
Well, part of it is we didn't have a winter. And when you don't have a winter, you have a lot more activity. It's just when it warms up. I think that's part of the cause and effect. Believe me, we follow this. It was either 55 or 58% increase in calls for service last year as an organization. So we're hoping that that flattens out for us.
The trend just seems to be different. It's an ebb, an up, down, up, and then this one is just down, down, down.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, but when we look at January and February, year to year, they're up. We're flat for March of this year, and I haven't seen April numbers. So,
Right. But February for 21 and 22 were down. March, they went back up. This year, in January, they're up. They went down in February, went down in March.
and I think it's driven by a couple of things. One, I think the lack of the winter. It just wasn't that cold. The other thing is what drives municipal Part 1 crime is larcenies. So when you get new asset protection people, or maybe one of the stores had a bad inventory, we see our calls for service go up, and it's usually temporary till the next inventory or that asset protection person moves to another place.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins, Ward 4. Thanks again, Chief, for the comprehensive report. This is probably a nitpicking question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. On the chart that has traffic stop data, what year is that for? Because I didn't see the label, or I'm just trying to get an idea what year that was for.
This is, we can only fit on this. This is from April of 2022
Okay.
through March of
Okay. All right.
2023.
And then on the chart that talks about the significant operational event. Was that individual out of the county that you apprehended?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
And we have arrest warrants out for that individual.
Great. And then finally, just an observation and again, a comment on the slide that talks about training succession planning. Again, I want to compliment you and your staff for continuing that process. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate the funding the council provides us to do that.
Yes, Matt Trollinger, Ward 2. Thank you, Chief. I'm going to take a look at another slide with you. Reportable collisions from October through March. Couple questions about that. Reportable collision, is that defined as the same way the state and the county define it? Basically, somebody's injured or a vehicle has to be towed?
Yes.
Okay, so if it's a fender bender, there's no EMTs or EMS needed.
We do an exchange of information. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So it appears as though this data is consistently showing an increase, at least from October through March. Do you have any insight as to that? And it looks like year by year, it's gone up, or at least let's just take from 22 to 23.
I think as we move out of COVID, we're seeing more and more people on the roads, and we're seeing more collisions because of that. If the council desires, we can try to drill down further to see where these collisions are occurring. We do write the collisions on Crane Highway. So a significant portion of those that have to be written come off Crane Highway, but there are other places in town that where the car has to be towed or someone's transported to the hospital.
Okay. Increase in folks being down here, could that be a factor as well, like increased population, increase?
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's part of it, but
I'd also mention with was it Middleton Nice Bridge being opened? We're seeing a lot higher volume of traffic avoiding the Washington DC Metropolitan Beltway by going up 301 and getting north. I come down on a random Tuesday now and traffic is backed up at Centennial down 301 northbound as far as you can see on random days where it used to just be Fridays.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, I think it's I think Mr. Manuel's very correct on that, because if you follow apps like Waze, as soon as something happens on 95, the kickover for bypass traffic is usually 301.
And Virginia Department of Transportation is advising travelers to use 301.
Really? Okay.
As a bypass around, once again, the northbound 95 cluster, if you will. Something else.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
But yeah, there was an accident, pretty significant accident. Was it Sunday on 301,
Sunday,
just north of town?
Just north of town, yeah.
Turkey Hill Road.
Yeah.
That one's a bad one to come in.
Yeah, it's designed.
Any other questions for the chief?
Just one other question. For the safety committee, we asked for crosswalks at Glen Auburn. That was, we put that on the agenda. Has there been any further discussion? We were told that we could do that.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, I'm drawing a blank. I think, did we meet on that, Michelle? Okay. I will follow up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, chief.
Thank you.
And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Next is Director Harrington. Come on up. All right. Any questions for Director Harrington? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilman Jenkins from Ward 4. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I was looking at the slide where you talk about planning inquiries and this citizen planning academy. I would wholly hope that can be accomplished. That I think that would do a great deal of work to help our citizens understand the planning process. I know you're doing a lot, but I know this is a lot of work, but that was very encouraging to do that. I do know that there's one that's being started in Baltimore County. And of course, they're a lot bigger than we are and a different form of government, but I know there's an organization that's starting a planning academy up there as well. And then you talk about there's been 5 inquiries for annexations.
Yes.
And so what kind of input are you looking for us now? Because you asked a question input about it. So what are you looking for from us, or at least from me?
So as a council as a whole, I'm looking for the general guidance consensus on whether annexations are reasonable at this time. We can't deny applicants due process. So if they want to submit an application, we cannot deny them that. But I would also like to make sure that as people are reaching out to me, that I'm not saying, yeah, go ahead, submit, everything's great. We'll take you through the process and we'll get you settled. And so if there's a general consensus on where the council is at this time, knowing where we're at with our development capacity analysis, water, sewer, emergency services, if there's a general consensus on whether or not a annexation would be favorable or not moving forward, that would be much appreciated by staff.
Director Harrington, in light of some information that was received today about the county talking about water appropriation, and I will start off this conversation here. It is my strong desire not to mislead anyone and say come into the annexation process when we right now have to make sure that we have adequate facilities. So I am in favor of just right now not pushing forward any more annexations until we can really soundly say, here is our water appropriation solution. And I will open it up to council to give me your input on that as well. Councilwoman Bryant-Ward.
Madam Mayor, I am in complete support of that. I think that we have enough annexations on the books right now that have not, they haven't expired. And so we owe it to them to give them the adequate public facilities as we have it. And so I would really like to wait until this water situation is fully addressed and we have something concrete to say that we can move forward with anymore.
I'll go down here. Councilman Goldsmith, what is your feeling on this?
We usually get a info presentation for someone who's going to be in the future requesting annexation. I like those. That doesn't mean any commitments. It's just a matter of they're coming to us. We don't even make any comments, basically, what they think they would like to do. It would also give us an appreciation for how much more we are looking at a need to be. So not maybe to do the formal annexation, but allow the info presentation to take place.
Okay. Councilman Trollinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would agree on putting any future annexations on hold until we get a sure understanding of our adequate facilities as it stands with everything that we have on the books. So, and I appreciate all the work you're doing to set this up. I think it's going to be a real great guide for us and our neighboring communities as well. So hold it for now.
And Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you. I would echo Councilwoman Bryant-Ward's and Councilman Trollinger's comments about putting on hold. And I would hope, and I look forward to the full implementation of the tools that your department has developed and will continue to work on, specifically the development capacity analysis. I would hope and look forward to the Planning Commission using that tool. I look forward to the adequate public facilities ordinance. And that, and I have other comments about that, which I will provide later, not at this forum. And so, I don't know, the town in general, the staff, Mr. Director Stahl and yourself are working diligently to figure out needed water allocation. So I think it would be prudent on our part to pull back and just wait and hold and see what we have. And then again, effectively use the tools that are being developed. Thank you.
And to incorporate Councilman Goldsmith's request, not to actually have the applicant so much here or the proposed applicant, but if you could just, as you did here, just say we've had more inquiries, knowing that the consensus is now just to wait until we have a solid water appropriation plan. But just so we're kind of kept in the know that there are other parcels that are interested in coming in, just so we kind of know that.
Absolutely.
Could I just add one? I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, or could we have more perhaps planning commission, town council work sessions?
If that's.
I
the
mean,
way
I,
to go.
I personally found them very, very helpful and useful to exchange ideas and have a good, robust discussion about the issues. So I would encourage that.
And I think that would be up to the chair and up to Councilwoman Bryant-Ward, since she is our representative for the council on that. But, you know, I'm always encouraging everyone to stay informed. Now, speaking of, it looks like you had a meeting yesterday with Municity. How did that go?
It went very well. So we have closed out phase 2, which is kind of the building, the software behind the scenes. We are moving into phase 3. And that will be more on the technicalities, and they've set up a demo website that they'll give me access to so we can start testing it and seeing what we need to fix and move forward with during phase 3. And then phase 4 is when we get into the actual kind of training implementation before we get to the next few phases before going live. So it's making good progress.
Fantastic. Thank you for that update. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Director Stahl, come on down. All right, before we open it up for any questions, I have to say your team did an amazing job in Kings Grant. They had, they really were cheery. They were in good moods. They did the job. They got it done. It was 11:30 at night when they pulled out. I heard those trucks going by the house, but thank you so much for that. Only a few residents were affected by that, and I know that you have plans to go in there and do more analysis on there, but please pass on to your team. You did an amazing job, so thank you very much.
Some of us were out again last night until 2:30 in the morning, so it was another late night last night.
You weren't in Kings Grant, were you?
No, we were on 301. We were hooking up the car wash last night, but because we needed to take a water outage, we have to wait until after 11 o'clock when most of the businesses close, so that
Yes.
we don't affect all of the businesses.
Well, thank you
But it
very much.
was good. We did get the manhole put in up there on 301. We were able to squeeze it between the major fiber optic line and our water line and get the manhole in for them for the sewer connection and also the water connection. So it worked out extremely well last night. Things were, you know, on any of these type of projects, especially late at night, things can be rather challenging sometimes. And last night, you know, it was a challenging project, but it seemed to go fairly smoothly. We got everything hooked up. So I think the Wills Group will be very happy that they got their connection last night.
Thank you very much. I will open the floor for any comments for Director Stahl.
Thank you. Councilman Jenkins, you award for it. Again, thanks for the report. And I just want to compliment you and the staff for providing that advance notice of the work that was being done on St. Mary's Avenue. That got filtered out and it was very helpful. So thank you for doing that. Whoever else.
And I would just like to say on that, we are paving.
Yep.
We are actively trying to put down between 4,500 and 5,000 tons of asphalt on a street road list that we have provided to council and to the public. One of the challenges that we run into, in scheduling is, of course, the rest of this week, they're calling for rain. And so when you put out a schedule in advance, next thing you know, we get 5 or 6 days of rain. And it just totally backs the whole schedule up. And so it becomes a challenge. We're very hopeful that tomorrow we get both Howard Street and St. Mary's paved. And before all this rough weather comes in the rest of the week. So it is a challenge.
And I certainly empathize and appreciate that. And again, just that some sense of advance notice goes a long way, even though it could be delayed because of weather or supply chain issues. So thank you again for the staff for doing that.
No problem.
Any other questions from council? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that brings us to our treasurer, Ms. Larson. Come on down. Thank you very much for the report. Any questions for our treasurer?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Councilwoman Bryant-Ward, looking at the finance report for general fund, And when you had the capital outlay and there was a deficit, you expense more than, or, okay, so that was not expense, that was a year-to-date comparison.
Yes,
Okay.
it's what we expensed as of March 31st last year compared to what we expensed this year. Yeah.
And it was significantly less.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilman James again. Well, thank you for the report, and I know this is going to be nitpicking again, but thank you for the charts because that to me is very helpful, the visual. So I appreciate your efforts in doing that. Thank you. And also the ARPA chart is very useful and functional. Thank you.
Easy enough. We'll save all of our questions later on for this meeting. Thank you. And Director Phipps. Any questions for Director Phipps? I have a comment.
Oh, okay.
I know, you're not going to get out with that. Great job on the farmer's market. I went there, well, opening day was a little washout, literally, but it opened on Wednesdays instead of the Saturday. And it's so much more robust on Wednesday, which is great. And on Friday, on Saturday, even this last one with the wind and everything, it was very active. So the food trucks coming in, the different vendors, it is such a joy to go on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So thank you very much. I know that that has been your baby since you've been here, and slowly letting go of the reins, and your two replacements have been phenomenal. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that.
Any other comments? Easy peasy. Thank you. All right, that comes we are at a matter of council discussion, and that would be Carson again. Come on. If you want to take, if it's going to be a little bit longer, you can just take that microphone down and sit at the table if you want, or you can stand up there.
Depends on how many questions you got.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening to council and going back and talking with the auditors about our concerns. So hopefully council has been able to look at the revised information that was provided to us, and I will open the floor up to council to ask any questions.
We do have Danny or Dan Kenny with us that can explain the reasonings behind the hours and the proposal. So
What it seems like we all had questions. I was satisfied with the answers provided in your report, but so good job.
could you at least let him speak?
Oh, please let him speak. Did he already pop off? He's like, I'm out of here. I see you. Yes,
right.
yes,
Good
please,
evening,
Danny,
everyone.
the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Dan Kenny, partner with Mitchell and Titus, and pleased to have the opportunity to serve the town of La Plata. As you know, I retired from Cone Resnick. They no longer are in the business of performing audits for counties, cities, towns, libraries, and Board of Eds. To be with Mitchell and Titus as a partner, and looking forward to working with the town. You guys have experienced a lot of growth in the last few years. And the team that I have presented and put forth, I'm very pleased. One gentleman in the proposal, his name's Paul Garrity. He used to work with me at Resnick, and then he left Resnick and went to KPMG, one of the big fours, was a partner there for 20 some years, retired there, and he's now at Mitchell and Titus. Another technical person that we have is Steve Beloga. He's a former E&Y person. Elizabeth Dorman, she's also has a lot of state and local experience. And so I'm really pleased with the team that I've put forth. And you guys, as I was telling Miss Larson the other day, you are a town, but you're a big town. You know, you have last year approximately 69 million in assets, a general fund expenditure budget of almost $9 million. 3 proprietary funds, water and sewer, sanitation, and other. So you have a lot going on, and looking forward to, working with Miss Larson and Miss Ness, providing them with additional guidance on questions they might have as they experience different things. Also, to point out in our proposal, we also have an alliance with BDO. So if there's ever a need for additional IT questions and answers, talking about, the systems that you have that's outside of the scope of the audit, we're able to provide that. So I think, the firm I'm with now is well positioned to serve the town of La Plata.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Karina, for having the comparison there between the 2 audit companies. It really made it very easy to compare apples to apples. And one thing is, if the auditors, for whatever reason, exceed the 600 hours that they are proposing, is there an additional cost to it? Or if they come in lickety split and they're only using 300 hours, is there a price break on that?
I'm gonna let Danny.
Danny, you get that one.
All right. So great question. So the hours that we included in there was an estimate of what is anticipated to get all of that work done. And as you may or may not know, within your governmental entity, we have to opine on the governmental activities and the business type activities and all the major funds. So within that audit, you're not just getting an opinion on whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented for the town in its entirety, but you're getting an opinion on all of those different opinion units. So that's why it takes 600 hours. The 600 hours is actually less hours than what was incurred the year before, because I am hoping that, with Miss Larson and Miss Ness working together and having the experiences they've had, that, we'll come in at around that number. But to answer your direct question, you will not be charged anymore if it exceeds 600 hours, okay? And if for some reason it comes in at 300 hours, we will have a fair discussion. But I highly doubt, because I've done the audit and I know what you have, I highly doubt it's going to come under significantly less, because it's always been more. But I'm a fair person, and I would certainly entertain that. Or if there's some other way that I can come up with that the town could do certain things to carve out certain amount of hours, I'd be willing, in the beginning of probably the following year, to work with Miss Larson and Miss Ness to see if we can reduce the hours somehow. But once again, you're not charged based on direct hours. That's, you have that fixed fee. I just included that in there because I know how long the audit has taken, and I wanted everyone to be able to see, to be transparent. This is what it takes in order to do the work in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards.
Thank you for that explanation. Any other questions from Ms. Larson or Dan? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being here, Dan, and answering our questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so we need a consensus to move forward with this legislation, right?
I think that's after this.
Okay. Do I have a consensus to move forward with this legislation now that we have been clarified?
Yes.
No. Okay.
I'm okay with moving forward with it.
Okay. So we have a consensus to move forward. All right. Thank you very much. Next, don't go anywhere, because I think you're up for the FY 23 budget amendment and ARPA reallocation.
Yes. So after reviewing the current ARPA expenses, we are estimating to be around 750,000, possibly slightly over that. And that would mean that we would have to do a single audit. A single audit would cost a lot of staff time and about $10,000. So in order to try to avoid the unnecessary single audit, being that we are literally probably at that point, I am proposing that we split the 65 percentile salary that was designated to be covered by ARPA in FY '23 between FY '23 and FY '24. In doing that, that means 143,000 would be actually captured in FY '24 expense instead of FY '23, which would hopefully, if my forecast works out, keep us under that 750,000 to avoid the single audit. The other thing this also does, which I realized after the fact, it also helps out your FY '24 budget in the fact that now all the salaries aren't coming out of your tax revenue. Part of that's going to be covered by the ARPA funds.
Will it impact, will our employees feel any impact on
won't.
it? Okay, it's just, that's what I figured.
They don't
but-
even know it.
All right, good,
This
good,
is
good.
merely something that we noticed and figured, what can we do, since it's such a minute thing that could actually affect our budget.
Okay, question.
So wasn't a single audit included in the proposal?
It was, but if we don't do it, we're not paying for it.
So are we gonna amend the proposal?
Well, the proposal is actually just for the actual audit. It did not include the single audit because the single audit's under the
That's a single.
yes.
$1,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the amount for the actual audit, it's for the audit and the UFR. I'm not including that single audit amount into the legislation. I removed that because we're not gonna have it
So you're
done.
gonna remove it from the proposal because it was in the proposal, or are we gonna,
No,
I'm
no,
confused.
no, just, so the amount, what was it, 78,800
Yep.
is for the audit and the UFR. It does not include, it would be 88,800, I think, if we included that single audit.
So the ordinance will state the 78,000.
Yeah,
That's
which
what-
does not include the audit, single
Okay.
audit.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
That was my question too. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? So we're looking for a consensus to,
Well, there's two parts to this.
oh, then please continue.
So, well, after analyzing the amount that we were actually going to be covering for the 65 percentile, we are actually would have 32,000 unapplied because that wouldn't cover. We budgeted 325,000 for that to cover that 65 percentile, and actually it's coming out to be 292,000. So that's leaving around 32,000 that we cannot use for, because there is no expense there for that amount. So we are asking that we reallocate those funds to the ARPA consulting services because we feel we're going to need more funds to cover those services.
And can that be, if we don't utilize that, if, can we reallocate that again? Okay.
Yes.
So this is kind of a safety net right now, and to make sure that the books are all balanced, and with that $32,147, applying it to the consultant as a, just in case, but if we don't use that.
We will probably use that. Based
You're
on
the
what I've
expert,
seen,
you're
we
the
will
expert.
probably use that, yes.
Okay,
And then lastly, when looking at what we actually received and what we've allocated for the ARPA expense, we have $603 that were not allocated. And I'm recommending that we allocate that also to the ARPA consulting funds.
so the 32,147 plus the 603 to make that, okay.
Yes.
Any questions? All right, excellent. All right, so we're looking for a consensus to move this forward to legislation today with those corrections.
Yes.
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 And I agree. So it will be moving forward. Thank you so much.
And Madam Mayor, if I may,
Please.
while we did batch this under one discussion item, it will take two for execution. It will take two items on the agenda under legislation to, like I say, implement this change. These changes, I should say.
Okay. Thank you so much. That brings us to matters of information. Do you have anything that is not on the agenda that you would like to add?
I do not at this time.
So let's go straight to legislation. Ordinance 23-12, financial plan amendment for introduction only.
Yes, Madam Mayor, an ordinance concerning amendment to the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2023 budget for the purpose of amending the Town of La Plata fiscal year 2023 FY23 budget and all matters generally related thereto.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to ordinance 23-11.
Madam Mayor and Town Council, for introduction this evening, an ordinance concerning amendment to the Town of La Plata ARPA spending plan, allocation and reallocation for the purpose of amending the Town of La Plata American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA spending plan and all matters generally related thereto.
Thank you. That'll bring us to resolution 23-15, independent auditor contract for introduction and consideration of adoption.
It's Madam Mayor and Town Council, a resolution concerning independent auditing services, auditor services for the purpose of authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract agreement with Mitchell and Titus LLP for independent auditor services and all matters related thereto.
All right, do I have a motion to adopt resolution 23-15 as written?
I make a motion, we adopt resolution 23-15 as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. So 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you very much. That brings us to resolution 23-17.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Town Council, for introduction and consideration of adoption, a resolution concerning World Migratory Bird Day for the purpose of urging all citizens to celebrate the observance of World Migratory Bird Day in the Town of La Plata and to support efforts to protect and conserve migratory birds and their habitats in our community and the world at large.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to accept resolution 23-17 as written?
Madam Mayor, I will make a motion to approve resolution 23-17, World Migratory Bird Day as presented.
And do I have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? I'll just add one thing in here. If you haven't been following the purple martin, which is our hometown bird, they are coming here and they're here already, and you can find them nesting over by the train station, and also the hummingbirds are coming up here, so follow them online. So we have a motion and it has been properly seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. This brings us to our new business, the commission reports. We will start with you, Councilman Goldsmith.
There's been no meeting of the design review accord since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Trollinger.
Yes, we met today, the Beautification Commission. It was great. We had good attendance. We talked about the clock being, the planners are coming in on Thursday, so there'll be a beautiful spectacle for Celebrate La Plata this weekend and for other events here in town. We have our next meeting in May. We talked about the interplay between the Beautification Commission and potentially keep La Plata beautiful. So we're going to keep talking about how we can enhance both groups as we move forward. But it was a really great meeting. I'm very thankful for all the time that our members put into our town.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Bryant-Ward.
Yes, so we had a planning commissioner to step down, and we have a 5th planning commissioner that serves as an alternate. And I would like to recommend the appointment of Gregory Sampson as our new planning commissioner to replace Mr. John Mudd.
All right, I would entertain a motion on Councilwoman Bryant-Ward's recommendation.
I'll make a motion to accept Councilman Bryant-Ward's recommendation for a planning commission replacement.
Do I have a second? I would second it. Any discussion? And all in favor?
Is there any reason why Mr. Mudd resigned? I mean, is there a reason? Okay.
All in favor of having Mr. Sampson now as a permanent member of the Planning Commission Board, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please congratulate him on his new appointment. does that mean that we are looking for
alternate.
an alternate? Fantastic. Thank you so much. And does that complete your report?
It does.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Jenkins.
Nothing to report.
Okay. But I do. So coming up this weekend, it's a busy weekend, and we are going to pray that the rain either hits us Friday or Monday, because on Saturday it's Celebrate La Plata. And you know those bed races are so much fun. And we are going to have Shellee Stine out there doing the blood pressures and the diabetes screening and all that. So that is 12 to 4 on Saturday. And on Sunday at Wills Park, we will be having autism awareness. We've got the Pathfinders coming out, and last time they did such an amazing job. The police will be out there in conjunction with that. You may have seen one of the squad cars that have the puzzle pieces on there. We need to bring awareness to our community about autism. It used to be 1 in 150 were affected. Now that number has significantly dropped. That it's 1 in
About 50, much higher amongst boys than it is girls.
Yeah, and so we need to recognize if someone is on the spectrum, and they do such a great job of that. So that is on Sunday. On May 6th, I am so excited to announce that there is going to be a community refrigerator grand opening at Christ Church. They've been working on this for a while, so that will be, they're having a ribbon cutting on May 6th. On May 9th, one of our own little La Plata residents is going up to the Capitol, up to the governor's house for being recognized for District 4, which is Calvert, St. Mary's, and La Plata, as the winner of If I Were Mayor contest. There were over 2,200 essays submitted, and there were 10 that were chosen. And one of our residents that goes to Archbishop Neal was the winner. So she will be, her name is Natalie, and I am not quite sure how to say her last name. So she is going to be Natalie. She is, we'll send pictures out of this amazing accomplishment. I can't wait to read the essay. I didn't choose it. It was a committee up with the Maryland Municipal League that read all of these essays, and hers was chosen for District 4. So that is very exciting. That on Friday, well, I don't want rain on Friday either. We'll have it till next week. Friday is opening day at the Blue Crabs. So I hope everyone will come out and support our local baseball team here. And we also, we're so appreciative of all of our employees. And we are having an employee appreciation day this week. They are the heart and soul of the town. They're the ones that do all the back-breaking work, 2:30 in the morning, just kind of hanging out there at 3:01, putting in a manhole cover, or getting phone calls in the middle of the night, or the police working all hours. So I just want to say how much I greatly appreciate all of our employees, and I know that they will be recognized this week in just a little manner, but know that we greatly appreciate all your hard work. And with that said, that ends my report. And we are going to take a 5-minute break so that we can move down to this table and then discuss how we are going to responsibly spend the money that we have. So thank you all for coming, but you can stay. Just take a little break. It'll be long.
First thing about a black suit. Feel like I'm doing this. Oh, yeah. Coffee stain on anything. What's that? No, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess if you got someone like that.
Stupid. That's what.
I was.
Yeah. All right, is everyone here that needs to be here?
I believe so.
Yes. Okay. So we are going to discuss the manual, the budget discussion for operating funds, so. Okay. There we go. We are going to discuss our budget for operating funds. All right, so the floor is all yours.
So you guys received the budget summary. These expenses, well, it has the revenues that I've projected, mainly for the majority of the revenue does come from the real property tax. That information came from the county. In that number, I did include 97 homes from Pine Grove that have not been captured from the county, but we do have building permits out. So I'm assuming we would be getting those use and occupancy permits, and then there would be property tax revenue based on that. So those numbers include that. Also, we
I will say that is an unknown variable because until they sell those, they're not going to get the use and occupancy. Therefore, they're not going to show up on the books. So they could, in theory, sit there for a time.
yes, yeah, I did that merely based on the building permit set and assuming that this will continue, but I'm only capturing what we have done so far through February. There were another 20 in March, but they are not included in this. I just did those that I could, hopefully we would get the use and occupancy permits for. Then there.
I should say the last I talked to, I think it was 42
Sold.
sold.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Was it before February?
No.
Okay.
No, they didn't
Okay.
they didn't actually start
Be-
selling until, I think, February
Okay.
25th, I believe.
So then,
The special taxing district was one of the major, I don't think they wanted to close until they had that piece of the puzzle
They have
finalized.
closed houses already, so they right around the end of March, they started closing.
Right.
Because with the narrowness of the roads, it has made it somewhat tough because we've been talking to them about parking. And, maybe limiting parking to one side of the street because boy, when they park on both sides of the street, it makes for a very narrow lane down the center with all the construction traffic. So
It's definitely a traffic calming measure.
Yeah.
Yep, that is.
Back to Dave.
Do you want to join us up at the table since one of the memos is definitely, the first one is of yours. Can we take that first memo right here? That's with the request for personnel. No other department, I mean, I know legislation is looking for a town clerk.
yes, but that was in FY23 budget, and that's been a continuous position. This is only
New.
the positions that are above or additional positions in FY24 that were not in FY23 is what. that
Okay,
is.
so I'm sorry if I'm going to ask questions that are not as intelligent as they could be, but in FY23, I'll take, since we're talking about the police department, how many positions were requested? And how many positions were filled,
Well,
fully filled?
I can only tell you what
Spill.
was Well, I can tell you what was requested based on the budget that was approved.
Okay,
So based on the budget that approved, including the additional one that you guys did earlier, or what was it, last month?
that was
This
10 over at the hospital.
Yeah, it was one of the, yes. It would be 29.1 employees because there's a half-time employee and a 0.6.
But they didn't, that's how many would be on staff. How many did they request and was funded last year?
29.1. That was was in the budget. I don't
An
know.
additional 29.1?
No,
No.
20,
Total.
21.
How many did new positions did they
Okay,
request?
so, all right.
And
So
funded?
in FY 22, there were 24.5. And then in FY 23, 29.1.
Okay, so almost 5. 20, what did you say?
29.1 for
Uh-huh.
FY 24. And in FY 23, there was 24.5.
24.5 and 29.1. Okay, so we're
Yeah,
thinking almost
4.6.
Yeah, 4.6. So that 0.6.
FY 22 had 24.5 and FY 23 had 29.1.
Okay, and they were fully funded, those, so
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And then now for FY 24, they're going from 29.1 and they're asking
For 36.
for up to 36.
Now, I know one in here says grant, but I don't have any documentation or anything that would provide grant revenue to cover that position.
And we know that, correct, chief?
That's correct. So the
cycle.
Grant year one's different than municipal budget year. So
Right.
historically in the past, we've applied for this grant twice. The previous treasurer didn't fund it, and we would just kind of get to it when we got to it if the grant was awarded.
If it was awarded.
And that would be a 75-25 for 3 years, which would be about $28,000 for the first 3 years of that position.
There is another one, the mental health response, which it has a grant by it.
Yeah, that's
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, we've been applying for that grant. Each year, we're hoping that we get it because it will be a model, but we haven't been fortunate enough to have the grant honored.
So isn't a canine handler covered by the Rothenberg grant?
The dog would be.
Just the dog? Okay, the handler.
If I could just.
Please.
Through for this. Looking at the memo, and Maria works really hard with this as we kind of work through this budget, and so did Brent. As you look at it, as a detective sergeant position listed, our desire there was to reclassify the detective corporal to a detective sergeant. We weren't asking for a detective sergeant and a detective corporal. We were just asking to reclassify that, and I think that's already incorporated in the budget. One of the things that we have seen is the workload in the detective bureau picking up, and it's not only the volume, but it's the type of crimes that our officers have been dealing with. We successfully handled a human trafficking case that maybe 3 years ago that would have been sent to the Charles County Sheriff's Office. We had a burglary investigation that closed out with 41 victims. It's a lot of time you put into that, and a lot. We had a lady come up from Florida yesterday to retrieve some of her stuff. We had the stalking case out of the Target. I would bet we had 80 hours in a weekend chasing that individual down and we had a carjacking recently. So the types of cases that we're working now are much more complex. So having that detective sergeant would just be a reclassification. So that would kind of address that. We addressed the mental health officer. I'd love to. It would be a model for Southern Maryland to have this. But if we don't get it through the DOJ grant, then we don't get it through the DOJ grant. You know, it's something that we could use, but it kind of is what it is. Moving down the list, when I talk about these positions, I only ask for what I need. And I'm watching this town grow, and I'm watching the burnout factor of my officers. I'm watching and coming from Prince George's County, one of the things I look at is call complexity. There's one thing about call volume. You can run alarm calls all day long, and you run alarm calls all day long. But we're seeing more and more of the type of calls that take more of our time on the street, take more of our time in the back end during the investigation. So, I think we have figured out within our, and like I said, let me back up. We're willing, we know you have to have a balanced budget. We understand that. But we also know we have to balance that with the needs. So, we're willing to, the position that we're asking for the civilian to take over evidence, that would take a lot off of command staff. Because I have a lieutenant who basically manages evidence. We're willing to defer that position. We're willing to defer one of the officer positions that we're asking for, and we'll see how the revenues come in the future. We believe we have a solution like we have done in the past to fund 2 of the positions. As you may recall in the past, we had issues at the hotels, and that was probably before this council was sitting, but we had issues at the hotels, lots of calls for service. There were overdoses. So working with the town manager at the time and the council, we brought in the hotel and motel tax. And that helped fund a position because we didn't have a hotel and motel tax in the past. And it really kind of put the people who were paying for it were the ones where the services were being rendered at the hotels and the motels. So that helped us fund it. When we looked at the issues that we have at the hospital, and it's nothing but call volume. I mean, we talk about it all the time in-house. What do we hear? Everybody who said, hold my beer. And then they end up in the emergency room. They may be impaired or high or whatever, and those services are needed. So we balance that with a partnership with the hospital. They pay 50%, we pay 50%. It keeps our people on the road much more than they were in the past. We have photo enforcement coming up. Should go live July 1. We meet every Wednesday or every Thursday at 10 o'clock with our vendor. We took a look at what other municipalities throughout the state are bringing in revenue wise as far as photo enforcement. My goal with photo enforcement was for be a self-sustaining kind of program. That would include the officer who's assigned to maintain this. It should be pretty much self-sustaining. We also want to expand the duties because we're moving the cadet to full-time. So part of his duties is to do parking enforcement. And I'm not talking about once through and writing a bunch of tickets, left wheels to curb, somebody who's 12 inches away when it says it's only supposed to be 8 inches away. Talking about enforcement of handicap and fire hydrant and fire lanes. We believe through those 2 sources, we would generate enough revenue to bring in to pay for the traffic officer position and the detective position.
Questions, we'll start around there. Go ahead.
So this detective sergeant is replacing a detective. What's the difference in the salary in the detective corporal and the detective sergeant? So it wouldn't be the full amount here.
Be 7.5%.
The,
That's the next set.
the amounts for these on the side, well, you guys don't see, the amounts include salary,
Right.
benefits. So I'm estimating, the detective sergeant at 126. And then a detective corporal, let me see if I have that in there.
Thing also.
Yes, that's the cost of the two.
What's the detective corporal with fringe included? Just
that
would be for the detective sergeant.
that would be. I don't have a corporal here.
The next position would be vacated.
Right, I understand.
But how much are they right now?
Right.
So
It would be 7.5% plus whatever that would multiply with other things. There's one step in the pay rate.
My point, Chief, is that we already have a detective corporal.
Right.
And so with that, you're not really taking on the entire salary.
Right.
Because he's replacing him.
yes, but I think we also need to look at the total number of positions because there was a lot of movement in the PD. Well, I'm going to move 3 people from a lieutenant to captain, but I'm going to replace 1 and then I'm going to move it to. There's still the fact that there are 5 extra positions on the sworn and 1 in the civilian. So somewhere there's still those positions there.
So do you have a comparative analysis once we have, whenever I'm moving a position off of a cost center and putting onto another cost center, I take that salary fringe and everything that goes with them and potential incentives. So do you have now what it looks like, what it was with the positions that were currently there with us moving?
I don't have exact numbers, but I can tell you it's not going to be a lot. So if you're going just from one position, a 7.5% increase, so maybe 10% at most when you add in the Maryland State retirement amount, the FICA. Yeah,
That's the
it's, yes.
Yeah, and you have a fringe rate of what?
FICA is 7.65%.
The total fringe.
What, I have it all separate.
Okay.
I don't have one, but I can tell you exactly. Let me pull up another sheet.
So while you're pulling that up, the detective sergeant where it says 126 is really not, I mean, it will be 126, but it's really not going to be the cost of it if it is replacing a detective corporal. That will not be filled.
It's promotion without backfilling the position.
Yeah. So that one will disappear.
There's still,
Costs are still there.
yeah, there's still
Difference.
5 positions.
No, but I'm just speaking of that one right there. So
Yeah,
where it says a new position is a detective sergeant at 126, 248. It is replacing the detective corporal at 99,258, whatever that percentage is. So I am not an accountant and I don't pretend to be. So to me, in my very simple mind, when we're asking for a new position of 126, 248, yes, we're asking for that, but that doesn't say, like underneath it, what I would write in my little checkbook, it replaces detective corporal at 99,250. So the
And
net
then we're going to
cost
replace
is,
that one.
well, no, the chief is not going to backfill that one. That will
Well, there's
erase.
5.
That is yes?
My proposal tonight, I want to try to balance so it makes life easy for everybody. I want to move the corporal to sergeant. And I think we can do that. The traffic officer and the detective, I believe we can cover with the other revenues coming from photo enforcement and parking enforcement. We, like I said, we did that with the hospital and we did that with the hotel motel tax. We can drop everything with the mental health officer. If we get the grant, I'll come back with my hat in the hand of the council and say, hey, is this the way you want to go? If it is, that's great. If it isn't, that's fine. And then the other officer position, we'll just take that off the table and we'll take the civilian off the table. Tonight, I think I can say conservatively that we can generate enough revenues through those programs to pay for those two officers.
Question for you with the mental health response and the grant. Take the grant away. We don't get the grant as we haven't. Is there a way to, and I don't know this, to partner with Alpass because they have the trained staff there that they do ride-alongs as part, they're very much wanting to be in the community. And I don't know if that is a stretch and Alpass, if we do a MOU with Alpass.
I think it's something we certainly approached it and talk about, talking to Dr. Abney, the biggest challenge she has is finding people to hire who are qualified to do that. So, Alpass being a private company probably pays a little bit more than Dr. Abney does. So that is, that very well maybe, I'm more than willing to sit down and have that conversation with them.
I don't know if Mike and Sean over there would even entertain that, but
You don't know until you sit down and have that.
absolutely. And where I see if you get your wish list here as presented, it would increase, the only way to really balance the budget would be to increase our assessed value from 32% up to 0.364%. What does that mean in dollars? How much is each household of the 3,200 homes going to be impacted?
So say if you take a $350,000 home and say that's the assessed value. Right now, with the tax rate, they're paying 1,120. With a increase in the tax rate by 4.4% or 0.44%, it would then increase the tax amount to the homeowner to $1,274. That is an increase of $154 for the year.
Okay, and just so that we are,
Yeah.
Right.
Or-
Per one.
Yeah.
Point,
I said 0.4
cents.
cent.
yes.
Well, I thought you said
Point-
percent, 0.4 cents.
So
0 point.
it's 0. So the tax rate would be,
36 cents on it.
I want to make sure I 36.4 cents per 100 assessed value.
Does that take into account the differential that the county may give us? So if they do take in the
Differential's not gonna
impact this,
Our
It
budget.
on
doesn't
that.
impact at all. That is a discount to you guys.
To taxpayers
Yeah.
within the town who
Yeah.
are taxed by both the county and the town.
which is what our 0.32, our tax rate is, and it goes down to 17.5% or 18%.
Yeah, I think it's like 14 something.
So wouldn't that
15.6.
like carry over? So
From my understanding, it's a discount on your, so what would happen is say you guys go, okay, we're gonna go ahead and raise the tax rate to 4.4 cents. What you're paying now, as long as the county doesn't raise their taxes, is gonna add 4.4 cents to your current tax.
so you're already taking into consideration, I mean, it's just going to be an even thing with the differential. So,
The differential is deducted from the county's tax.
Yes.
but from the counties,
Yeah,
from not our,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So projections on the revenue that we're anticipating from, I know we talked about it with the cameras. And then do we have any projections for revenue for the traffic enforcement? To
Thank-
see what that,
Since we have not had the cameras, I find it very hard to predict the revenue. We do not have any history for it and do not have. As far as the parking, based on the history that we did on parking, the last 3 years, we averaged about $500 a year in revenue on parking. And before that, the 3 years before that, and I'm assuming that's because of COVID, we averaged $5,300 per year in
That
parking.
was without dedicated personnel to,
Yeah.
so dedicated.
I'm sorry, Brandon. to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, chief.
Yeah, I pulled the numbers from the state of Maryland looking at municipals photo enforcement. So, I took a very conservative estimate looking at the city of Landover Hills in the town. They have 2 cameras. Their gross revenue is about $408,000. Their net is $151,484. We're gonna have 4 cameras, and I can't tell you what's gonna be generated or not. The city of Laurel has 4 cameras. Now it's a bigger jurisdiction than us. They have 920,000 that are gross revenue, and they have 707,000 in net revenues. City of Mount Rainier with 2 cameras, 1.43 million, with $760,000 in net revenue.
Well, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
DC.
it's very close to the DC line.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to make, and when I made this presentation to the council, I'm not looking to make a bunch of money. I am looking, and it is what it is, people speed. I'm looking for a self-sufficient program that covers its cost, and that includes the officer. I'd much rather have 3 months, 6 months of the program be up, so I can say, yeah, this is definitely what it is. What I do know is my number 1 complaint is traffic. Speeding, stop signs. This officer would be assigned to this program as part of their duties. They would be assigned to looking into these speeding complaints that we get on a weekly basis and to handle accidents. It would take the load off of patrol to a certain extent, so they're more focused on the calls for service than they are about other things. To me, that's the backbone that we have to take care of. And when it's like the hospital, if they're not at the hospital, then they're in the neighborhoods or they're in the business district handling calls. So I don't know what the council's position is, how comfortable they are, and I get it if you're not. But I know I've got this growing community and I got growing calls for service. And I'm trying to, within the budget that we have, find a way to bring on a couple of extra ancillary details that are gonna help take off patrol. And I'll gladly share this with you. You know, Chevy Chase, and that's probably a bad example because they have the main thoroughfare that goes through it. The town of College Park has 6 cameras and generates $2.8 million in gross with 1.6 in net. We're not gonna hit anything like that, but I think it's fair to say that we should be able to cover an officer with the revenues. It is what it is. This is just my way of trying to think out of the box and present a solution. And then when you look at the traffic or the parking, well, we had Mr. Van Cleef do a study, and over about an 8-hour period, he found, and the 8-hour period was over a couple of days because I didn't want a lot of his tasks that he just actually did. Found 33. Bring it right up here because I got it in my notes. He had 33 handicap violations and 13 fire lanes. It's $10,200 if people pay it. Now, I know people aren't going to pay it all. And the company that we've been talking with to do this electronically and make it much more efficient would do the back end on collections if we decide to go that route. What I do know is that people park in the fire lanes in front of Walmarts and Targets, and they do those sorts of things when they want to steal. I also know that if you park in front of a fire lane and there's a fire, the fire department does a whole lot of damage to people's vehicles because even if there's not smoke, they're going to run a hose and they have to do what they have to do. That's what they do. Handicap, I'm sorry if you park in a handicap violation and you're not handicapped, you should probably get a ticket.
It's a pet peeve of mine.
Oh, mine too, especially when I push my
This
father.
was our way of saying, hey, we need what we presented to you. There's no doubt about it. We're willing to cut back. And if the council says no bodies, we get it, no bodies. Well, I'm just trying to present something that's going to help. We see the pay point study and it tells us where we should be. And we're just trying to make sure we inch our way there.
So would you keep the dog handler?
The dog handler, we would probably defer for a budget or two,
Okay.
you know, and they're a premium, but one of the things I always try to do is I look at what's going on legislatively in California. Because 2 years later, it's going to land in Annapolis. And there was a lot of legislation about use of canines. I don't know if it passed or not in California, but it's kind of a barometer that I follow to kind of know what the trend's going to be here in Maryland.
Does that include a dog?
There's a lot, the task force that we belong to already offered to pay for the dog.
Oh,
The Roethlisberger Foundation is where most agencies get their dog, Ben Roethlisberger. So, and there's costs associated with it.
because when I did that, when Jim Goldsmith and I went to the Sheriff's Academy, they said that there's a state, they'll pay for 1 year of maintenance, some for the dog or something, there's some kind of grant program, so.
Yeah, they're a great program. And hey, people love dogs.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a vest. 2 people will get together and buy a vest for the dog.
And we happen to see how effective, and they gave us actual cases where they, in one case in particular, a dog saved an officer's life during a search at night. They found a gunman hiding out.
Yeah, the young child that was found,
Right.
deceased. So I think several dogs led to that.
That's,
So, giving up 2 of the positions, where does that put you? If
Well-
it gives up
I think there's,
the dog handler and the last one on the list,
all right.
So
the custodian.
So the
I think there's 2 sides of the equation. There's the expenditure, but there's also the revenue. And is council comfortable with us projecting the revenue for the cameras, for example, which we don't have any historical data? Chief has provided us with some examples, as well as what Ryan will be doing as far as parking enforcement. I think, we would have to add that to one end of the budget and then look at what Chief is saying and sort of maybe look what that impact would be to our overall number. would be one way to go about it, so that we're not sitting here talking in hypotheticals. We can crunch some numbers and get back to you with some specifics. I don't know if that council feels that would be beneficial.
So I listen to these all the time. They got tons of unpaid things and there are no recourses. We issue these tickets. There's nothing saying that people are gonna pay them. Is there any recourse to make them pay them? Obviously, it doesn't work in DC. They've done everything and they got to the tune of over $200,000 in one ward for outstanding traffic tickets, and they were, the council member was discussing it. So what's the recourse? If you issue the ticket, what's to say that we actually get the revenue in?
There's two recourses, and you can take step one and then step two. One is you work with the vendor who issues the tickets for you, and they can do the collections call and send the collections letter. After that, you can flag the tags. So they're not able to renew their tags until they come and pay their parking citations. We did it in Greenbelt and we were successful. I think a big difference, and I think you got a real good example there between Maryland's program and DC's, is DC has made the cost of the citation so high that people, and a lot of folks going into DC don't live in the area, so they don't care if they pay the ticket or not. Right. The tickets here in Maryland are $40, whether you're doing 15 over the speed limit or you're doing 55 over the speed limit. And it's a civil citation against the vehicle and not against the operator. So that's why we're able to flag the tags. Yeah, we talked about it when I was in Greenbelt. We had about a 60 to 65% percentage of people who paid theirs, and then we had to go back and do some sort of collections on the other.
So we would do 65% of the projected revenue to be on the safe side, or maybe a little lower margin. And then see what that revenue would yield us against the officers that you feel comfortable budgeting. If he's saying we can do away with 3, we want the other 3. And then we're looking at the fact that we're not backfilling the detective corporate. And I know there's a difference, I got you. But I'm just saying that position basically goes away because it's not gonna be backfilled,
Well,
it's just being.
There's still 6 positions that are
But he's saying.
Are open right now.
Yeah, so if you fund 3 of them, and how much was the estimate for the speeding tickets? Did you say 212? I know you emailed it to me.
It was like 210 for between.
210?
And 60% of it is getting 65.
Well, what's reported in the state of Maryland is actually collected revenue.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Revenue's not collected. We go back and tell you, the tickets were issued by each municipality. But what they report from gross income and net income is what's actually collected and not what's outstanding.
But you said that in Greenbelt, you collected about 65% of that and the other had to go to collections. So I'm looking at your Greenbelt numbers. If that's a number that you can bank on and say 60% versus 65% to give us a greater area of margin, and see what do you get of that if you do 60% times that 200 and whatever thousand.
126,000.
But that 35% that went to collection, what was the success rate?
It was usually pretty high. Sometimes it was 2 years down the road when they went to.
So it won't be realized.
Tax.
Yeah, but
And there's administrative
But
costs.
but they eventually get that.
They may not get it in this year, but this budget year. And so we budget at a safe rate of the 60% that we know we can collect.
So
And if we get the rest, we're good.
the 60% of the 210 would be 126. If I only remove 3 of the position, it would leave a deficit of 208,000.
With the revenue.
So,
With including the revenue, with 126,000 in revenue, and then adding in, and then keeping 3 of the
And
positions.
revenue from the, I know just have any examples, but the revenue that he projected from the cameras.
Yeah, the 210,000.
That's the ticket. I thought that was the tickets, the 210.
So no, that was the combination of.
That was the,
and
Yeah.
these are actual, the 150, the 160 is actual revenues collected. So that doesn't take into effect that the 60%, that's already subtracted out what they report to the state.
Chief, I have a question. As to these positions that are listed, that Karina listed for us here, to go forward with the traffic safety measures is what I'm going to call it, that you previously presented to us. That's not required. An additional officer is not required to facilitate those. Because that wasn't part of that presentation. And we had talked about back when you presented it and you reinforced it tonight. And I think we got to be careful about kind of ends justifying the means with these types of things, because we know DC, and I think part of their problem, just part of any municipality's problem with these measures, is they have to justify other areas. And so they're overzealous at times. And you talked about the expense or the ticket amount. Simple tickets in DC can be $250, and then they double it within, I don't know, 30 or 60 days. And so your normal person's not going to pay $500 in parking ticket. So I can appreciate the civil citation difference. I can appreciate the moderate amount, but would you be open to having a analysis period of the traffic enforcement measures in a natural environment rather than kind of, and I know you're not asking for it to justify the positions, but to have a better idea of what it's actually going to bring in with real data, so that we can confidently say, hey, look, this is fantastic in that we can now give the town what it needs, rather than it kind of being cart before the horse. And I think, you've been very transparent, throughout my time here as to asking what you need, not what you don't. But, and I will say, just for the record, I think it's a little odd that we're only looking at one department here with the amount of the overall budget that we have. And I understand new positions are new positions, but we've got a lot of money in a lot of different places. And it would have been helpful to look at everything where we can cut back, not just new positions, especially with all the new residents that we have potentially moving in. But would you be open to it kind of a test period of the traffic enforcement to see what it's going to do? And I don't, that means kind of opposed to the new detective until we have that funding already that we can see and put our hands on. Does that make sense?
So bring it back as a budget amendment.
Well, it's something Karina and I talked about. Karina, if you want to dive into that a little further.
So what we were thinking, because right now we do not have the revenues to sustain that additional operating cost, is to come back and do a mid-year review, see how the traffic cams are doing and how much revenue it's generating, see how well Pine Grove is doing, and then see if we are now getting the revenue to sustain those positions for the long term.
But wouldn't you have to have a person in that position? So that correct me if I'm wrong. So the traffic officer right now, you are having, you're not writing tickets because you don't use the personnel to write tickets unless it's egregious. But if you have a dedicated person like Ryan, who is now going to be the traffic officer, that will generate the income. So you're kind of,
he's going from a 0.60% employee to a full-time equivalent, and that's part of the budget. And that's going to be part of his additional duties.
But isn't that the traffic officer, right? Isn't that part of it?
He would be the one with the parking citations, as part of his cadet duties.
But with the traffic cams, don't you need a specialized person to?
Be a
Sworn officer.
So we will, by doing a test period, putting a whole lot more work on the existing officers to see if it works versus, I don't know if there's hiring them and
the one thing you don't want to get into is committing, because once you hire somebody, you kind of have that commitment to them. And right now, I mean, the budget does have overtime in it. I know the chief has a lot of his officers doing overtime, and that's part of the reason trying to get more officers to help alleviate that.
So wouldn't that mess with the budget a little bit? So if they're not doing overtime and they're doing regular hours, because isn't overtime time and a half?
It is, and I have it budgeted in here based on historical history, which honestly, let me look at the amounts. I don't see a whole lot of difference in the amount we've been paying for overtime really change. So over let's see, in FY 20, there was 126,000 overtime. In FY 21, it went to 155,000 overtime. In FY 22, it went to 224,000 in overtime. This FY 23 was estimated 283. So even though we're adding more officers, it seems like there's still, the overtime's still going up.
Well, it's because of the increase of that. And wouldn't that, now that you have Pine Grove, that is a viable construction over there, and they're adding more rooftops, and they're coming in at a pretty good, I mean, they've got what, already 90 that have received permits from there. Wouldn't that help with the budget as well?
Well, I did add in those 92 into the estimate for the real property tax. So I went in and took what the building permits and did the estimate of what the home value was based on the building value and the land, and added those as revenue, property tax revenue in the budget.
And what about the businesses that are coming in, the
I don't have that.
okay, because
Because the other thing we need to keep note on, and I just learned this from Councilman Goldsmith, there is no tax cap on the business, but there is for the homes. And I know that the assessments are going to be happening in September and October, which will affect the FY 23 budget. So I went in and kind of looked at where we would be, say if it was at the cap of 7% going up, and that would increase the revenue if it was at the maximum, 336,000. But it's hard to say, oh, Pine Grove's going to take off. It's going to continue on.
Absolutely.
You don't know what's going to happen. And this economy is kind of.
But what about the businesses that you know will, now they may not, at least the buildings for the car wash. I don't know what they're going to bring in for that, but their business is there. I don't know what the taxes are.
I don't get that. I get a amount of the total current assessed.
Personal property.
Yeah. Well, the personal property tax totally different, and it doesn't have anything to do with real property. But what I get, and I'm looking for the report, thought I printed it out, of what our current assessed value for all properties as of February. I believe that's when I got the report.
So new businesses coming in doesn't.
I would not know.
Okay.
No.
So can we, that you and the chief go back? You guys look at what you can do, what concessions you can make, what revenue you're comfortable, because I understand projections. I do.
Mhm.
And the worst thing in the world is to over project revenue and come in over budget. That is and you cannot explain it, you know. They think you have a good idea of what it's gonna do, and it doesn't. You know, 21, 22, 23 were examples for me. So I get it. I know how you feel and what you're trying to accomplish. So I would like to ask, as opposed to us, you know, not having all the information that you have. I don't know what you know, we don't know how many of those 92 homes that got permitted are gonna sell. We've got homes that are sitting, haven't moved. If you guys can come back, you know, go back and have a discussion. He's saying he's willing to give up 3 officers, look at what you can get in terms of revenue for the items that he's proposing, and see where we land and bring it back to us. You know, that would be my idea, because we don't have the information.
Well, in the sheets, it does give pretty much the breakdown of what each account is being budgeted for. And really, if you're looking at to increase revenues, unless we get grants or and you guys are comfortable with forecasting for the tickets, there's really no other area for me to pull revenue from. I've gone through the budget and I've identified different expenses that I could, under the capital projects, all of that costs for our capital project are coming from fund balance. Everything that was related to ARPA is coming from the ARPA funds. And then I went back in and looked at the reserves because we do transfers and we record them as expense for the vehicle reserve and the building reserve. And I took that and said, okay, we're going to do a fund balance transfer. So it's not coming out of our operating revenues to cover those. So I'm doing a fund balance transfer for it. That's pretty much, it's moving from general fund balance to a reserve fund balance of the 214,000. And then I went through all the expenses that we have as operating expenses that are not reoccurring every year, such as education, such as a 50,000 grant matching for beautification. And I said, well, since it's not reoccurring, let's take it out of fund balance. And those totaled up to 163,000. So we are right now funding other costs through fund balance in the amount of 378,000 already coming from fund balance to cover the current request these are for each of the departments.
Gotcha. So you're saying that over the years, we've spent from 126,000 now up to 223,000 in overtime. So is there a way we can, if we reduce overtime, and I don't know how you do that because you're still coming up short with staffing, if you reduce overtime with that fund?
That would be a big burden on the management to try to figure that out and limit the officers when there could be a critical call. That would be a hard thing to say, oh, you can't work overtime, but then the need is there suddenly and that urgency. I would think that would be a hard thing to say to cut out.
But wouldn't that be alleviated if you hired a person?
Well, we've been hiring new people and overtime.
To that, and I see it all myself, and overtime and straight time really honestly costs the department the same. Because right now, our fringe benefits cost us close to 50%. And so what happens is you're paying 100% of the salary plus 50% for fringes. When you bring someone in on overtime, it only costs you time and a half. So really, it's costing you the same whether they're working, and that's where the time and a half came from originally, was you're not paying benefits on that overtime. And so you're giving that additional cost back to the employee and not to the town. So there really, at least in my department, there isn't a whole lot of differential between straight time and overtime. It's just, for the most part, the overtime isn't budgeted. And so,
Well, no, I budget it.
I know,
I
but-
budget it.
Is your fringe 50%?
No, well, it depends, again, it depends on the employee, because if the employee selects a single plan and health insurance, they're not going to pay as much as a family plan. A family plan is running the town 36,000 a year for an employee. Its single plan is around, I want to say 8,700, something like that.
So you don't have an average rate, a range of rates.
Because it varies. I mean, so the health insurance plays a large role in that. If you have a public works employee making 40,000 a year, but we're covering 36,000 for their family plan, yeah, that's gonna make a big difference. But if you have a public works employee making 40,000, but only covering 8,000 for their benefits, that's not as much as the
So you
difference.
just don't have a range of what your fringe is. I know that.
I mean, it depends.
12%.
It depends on the employee. If you can't, we don't have it where the employee, an employee that makes 80,000 and we're only paying for the single plan. I mean, we're only paying 10%, but if they're on the family plan, we're spending a lot more. Now we do have like FICA, that's 7.6. The Maryland State Retirement is 11.42, I think, on their base salary. It doesn't include on the overtime.
I get that, but I just, when I do my salaries, in order to get my fringe, I do the total salaries times 12%. Do you want them?
I do each individual employee. So I take the employee, I calculate their salaries, I calculate what the FICA is going to be with the Maryland State. I add in what the benefit coverage they currently have, workers' comp, all of that is on each individual line for each employee.
So when you get done, you don't have a total that says fringe.
No, but I can get you the
And
total.
so take that total.
Actually, on the bottom of this, your, for the town fringe benefits is 2,364,479.
And you
for-
take that. And
And if you want
divide it by the total.
if you want to
salary.
look at, yeah,
And Councilman Goldsmith has been so patient.
I have been following the rules.
There you go. You have been. The
But-
floor is yours to ask a question.
Okay,
while they're
I
looking.
wanna, it's not so much a question, I wanna make a couple of statements about it. We're in a period of uncertainty right now. We're gonna have the tax assessments being done at the end of this calendar year. That's what the property taxes and such. We got Pine Grove going in. We really don't know what those figures are gonna finally be. They're selling 350, 400,000 each type thing. And then what was the other thing? I had a third point there. But bottom line is, at this point in time, anything we do for the additional positions you want to have, and I understand you're willing to make concessions and such. You're saying if we gave everything he was asking for, it would take 4.4% additional property taxes. I don't want to do any increase in property taxes right now because of all these uncertainties. We'll know if we have income coming in from the lights, the stop signs and things of that nature next year. So if necessary, defer everything for one more year. But if you get down to say two people you really need to have, which are high priority for the two people, we should be able to find it some way in there. I mean, with a budget as high as we have, finding positions for two people. And one of those is really not the 126,000. I think we're getting caught up on that. It's a promotion. So all it is a promotion. Is that accurate or not? Or
If that detective sergeant is moving somebody from corporal to sergeant and vacating the corporal position.
okay.
But not filling the corporal position.
We're not asking to fill. Now, down the road, as the community grows and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But not keeping it on the books. See, I see where you're coming from and I see.
Yes.
So it's on the books, it's open but not filled. So you have to.
well, if it's not going to be asked for, then it needs to be removed completely. Because right now it's in there as a request. So I would have to remove one of those 5 sworn positions if it's not going to be filled.
Which would impact the bottom line on this.
Well, yes, it would remove the position as a deficit.
I'm sorry.
Right.
It would reduce the deficit.
We just want to move one person up and vacate the corporal.
All right,
position.
because right now, when I look at the number of actual positions you're asking for compared to the previous year, you're going from 29.1 to 36. And that's what, so I took out the ones that you were going from part-time to full-time and saying, we can fund those, we can handle
Right.
that. Now I've got the other remaining 6 positions that we did not have in FY '23 and that are now being forecasted for FY '24. And those 6 positions are the ones listed. So if you're going to say that I'm going to remove the detective positions, that means it drops down to 5 positions, which reduces the deficit amount that we have to cover for all positions. And if you say, well, I'm only going to do 2 positions total, we then have that deficit around 200 and some thousand, which if you want to make a forecast on the revenue and say that it doesn't come in, then the town's got to be comfortable with saying, all right, well, fund balance is going to have to cover it.
And I thought some of those other positions were being replaced as well.
What I did is I looked at the total count. So if he's replacing a position, then it wouldn't have increased the account. That position should have been there and the same count should be. But we're going over 6.9 positions and 0.9 of it is moving from part-time to full-time. So that leaves 6 positions. That's more than from the previous fiscal year.
Chief, so what are the positions, which of those 6 positions, what are they replacing that can be taken off of the budget?
Well,
Yeah.
These were requests for new bodies. So the detective sergeant is really just a promotion, as we said. I think we understand that. The others were additional positions. Now, when you look at the grant, I understand that If we get the grant, we'll come back and say, can we have $28,000? I could probably find that in my budget if I had to.
Yeah, 28,000, I'm not worried about.
Right. Understood. Yeah, because it's listed as 112,790.
That's the 75-25.
Exactly, and that would be for 3 years. We're fine. We'll move evidence custodians, we'll look at in future budgets. The K-9 hammer, we can look at in future budgets. I'm really kind of looking down at that traffic officer and the detective. Now, one of the things that was brought up is the cost of overtime compared to straight time additional employees. We had a formula when I worked at Safeway. And when you got to X amount of hours of overtime in any given time, any given week, and it continued over 6 weeks, then it was time to start thinking about hiring a new employee. But I think it's important. Part of our COLIA's things that we do is we prepare an extremely comprehensive overtime analysis every year. And we've done it every year since I've been there, even though we weren't COLIA certified. So to me, the big question is, where are we spending our overtime dollars? Well, in 2022, 977 hours was for shift coverage. That was the number one thing that we had it for. 483 hours were spent in court. And we're always trying to be transparent. A lot of that has to do with the state's attorney's policy on witnesses. So some years they're okay with you also taking a phone call and responding in 30, 45 minutes. Some years they go, no, you have to be here. You just don't know. I had a spike in 2019 in court overtime to 1,269 hours. And that was because they would not put anybody on call. So we were spending a ton of money for people to sit there just in case they would need it. But we're happy to share these, our use of force analysis, anything that you guys want to look at that we do through COLIA.
I just want to point out with one thing with the overtime, I did reduce the overtime to 140,000. And part of that was because that second officer at the hospital, and I looked at what was the overtime rate for the hospital after that officer worked there, and it dropped considerably. So I did then an average of what percentage was the overtime for the other 3 years, took the hospital drop in consideration and reduced that overtime considerably because of that officer there, that they now don't have to pay for the overtime. Now, bear in mind, the officers at the hospital, that amount that we get from the hospital is in our budget as revenue to offset that amount.
And Corinne's right, because before we had Ken there, they were paying 40 hours of overtime a week to supplement the coverage of Jimmy. So, and although the nurses tell us they've been pushing to have the officers come back, that'll just be offsetting revenue. So to me, it's kind of offsetting revenues.
So the COVID years, when we had officers out, a lot for overtime, 2020, 2021, part of 2022. You talk about the overtime there. What did the overtime look like prior to COVID? Look at, can you see FY19?
I can't, my computer won't let me go.
So
As soon as I leave my office, I can't get to anything.
I have the analysis.
Well, we don't
in
want
front of us.
to.
I got here in 2013, and we go back to 2012. In 2012, we had 16 officers, and we had 4,587 hours of overtime. The trend line, as you can see, has been going down. Now, it came back up, you see the spike. Most of that spike is from the hospital overtime. That where we were 40 hours a week, that's a lot of overtime. But our trend line is going down. A lot of that is as you add staff, your overtime hours go down. Lieutenant Bagley does an excellent job at managing this the best he can. But you know, and again, when we look at where we're spending our money, it's late calls and late arrest is 462 hours. Special assignments is 562 hours. Community events is 215 hours. So, and you can see how these things ebb and flow throughout the year. Like I said, we're happy to share it. But one thing I want to point, I appreciate everything that Karina has done. She has worked so hard, and I sat down and we had a chat last week, And I understood her position when she's talking about balancing the budget and the memo that she prepared. Only thing I wanted to do tonight was be heard. In the past, it's worked out when I've come to the council and went, the hotel motel, it's taken my time. It's taken my officers out of neighborhoods and out of the retail. The hospital, when I came and said, I think we have a solution to this because it's taken officers out of neighborhoods and out of the retail area. So looking at this, looking at the numbers from around the state, these are agencies that have been involved in photo enforcement for a long time. I took the most conservative numbers I could find on half the number of cameras that we are going to have. And that's what I brought to the council. I appreciate everything Councilman Trell. We want to have a transparent program. But when the number one complaint I have is in La Plata is speeding, I got to find a way to address it. I got to find a way to answer all these neighborhood complaints. And our patrol guys do what they can do when they're not running calls for service. But on any given time, we have neighborhoods that are just, can you run radar here? And we put the trailer up, and the trailer looks good for a day or two, and people realize they're not getting a ticket from the trailer. So, but it does a good job of helping us capture it. And then on the other side with the detective, I just look at the call complexity that we're asking our people to investigate. And, you know, the first 5-6 years here, we didn't have a carjacking. We didn't have a lot of the things that we're now all seeing on a more routine basis. So to me, it's a customer service thing as well as a workload thing. But I appreciate letting me come here and speak tonight, say what I think we can do to move forward with the agency and try to just add a little bit each year so we're ready for what's coming, and there's a lot coming. Plus, we're seeing the crime trends out of the north that just keep making their ways down.
Big issue is projected income, getting a handle on that. All right, we have somewhat of a handle, you seem to indicate, for what Pine Grove is. That can give you a figure. Not a big figure at this point in time, but a figure.
It's, again, I'm estimating, I'm assuming that these building permits are gonna turn into a use and occupancy permit, and we're gonna get the tax, real property tax based on that.
You made a comment earlier, maybe they, by selling, they're gonna sell. They're gonna sell fast. Right now, what the market is in real estate, things go fast. In fact, we have the capability today to say coming soon. You can put it out there for 2 weeks, coming soon. So the day it actually hits the market, I mean, you've got a flood of people at that point in time bidding on those properties as such. We're doing a reassessment, tax assessment type thing this year. It's usually phased in over 3 years. A rough estimate is of how much has property appreciated in the last 3 years. 15% is very low, I think, at this point in time. So if you were able to use your figures, throw in a 15%, do 5% per year, as an example.
Capped for residential, we're capped at 7%.
Right, but the thing is that if you did it 5%, that's even lower than that. Just use 5% per year. What does that give you on figures as such? Now, the commercial, whatever it increases to be, is it 100% at that point in time? That's the way it works, such. Rental properties, I'm not sure how many rentals we have around here, but any increase in that is 100% as well. So it's not locked in or 7%. It's 100% at that point in time.
Yeah, I did, when I talked to county, I asked if they could give me some type of forecast for that, and they said they would not be able to give me anything until September or October.
And that's probably logical. But I think the basically thing is, are we optimistic or are we pessimistic? And I like to be on the optimistic side of such. We've got to cover, we've got a fail-safe point of the fund balance. Don't want to use it, but it's there if we have to have it. And then we've started looking at now 24, 25, 26 budgets. So those where you're looking at really heavy things where you want these things, they can easily probably fall in there at that point in time, once we get a handle on what our income is. And but there's so much in flux right now this year to get a good hold of what is our income going to be. So my feeling is, one, I don't want to raise taxes. Two, we have the fund balance. Are we optimistic about it and use it as a fall safe backfill if necessary? And meet what we can do. If you think you can get by 2, then you should be able to find enough for 2. I think we were hung up on that corporal or sergeant type thing. That's only what, a $20,000 increase probably we're looking at. Yeah, I know your numbers. I know on the books and bookkeeping, it's your numbers there. Somehow or another, we can slide it to the side.
I try to I take what each department says, this is what we anticipate the expenses for. Then I'm trying to forecast the revenues.
Right.
And then I look at, well, okay, this is our revenues, these are expenses. Oh, we were originally like 1.2 million. So then I went back and looked, what can I justify to be covered under fund balance? And that's why it came out. I can change where, like the reserves, their fund balance, they're just being moved to another fund balance. I think it's really up to the council. How protective are you of the residents' tax money that say, okay, well, are you comfortable? Say we do come, the revenues don't come in as high, or we decide, okay, let's say we're going to fund those positions. Is the council comfortable using an additional 300,000 when we're already using 78,000 to cover already expenses that are operating but not reoccurring operating expenses? And then the other thing, I just want to answer your question, benefits to salary. The benefits are 41.27% of the salary average.
So your question, are we comfortable with such?
It's your choice. I
Right.
mean, this is the revenue. This is our projected expenses. Our revenues are looking like
The revenue is projected as well. You
Mhm.
got projected
Yeah, everything's
expenses, and you got projected.
Everything is projected.
Right.
But it's based on history and it's based on what do we know now that we're comfortable to increase real property tax. Well, I was comfortable taking all the building permits that they submitted as of the end of February to add into there. So it's really, if we have a shortfall, is the council comfortable to use fund balance to cover those operating costs?
I'm more comfortable using fund balance than I am raising taxes right now. Right now, this year.
Fund balance. If we were to use the money out of fund balance, how do you get that money back?
When expenses are less than revenues.
At the end of a fiscal year.
Yeah.
Or they don't use it and it goes back to fund balance. Chief, with the evidence custodian, just thinking outside the box, here, could you not use, and I'm gonna use Brooks, because I know he's around, a retired officer that may want to put in hours, and do you need it full-time, or could it be something that it is, and I don't know the extent of work, but someone that, it doesn't have to be a sworn officer.
No, it doesn't need to be sworn officer. It was a civilian position and we'd be happy to start off with somebody part-time and have the position grow. If you've ever been to our evidence room, you know that we haven't had the time to do a lot of purging, so there's gonna be a lot that goes on, but that can just spread out over time. I'm open to anything, you know, like I said, I just came tonight to present a theory and, if it's accepted, it's great. If it's not, then I understand that as well.
But I do like thinking outside of the box on certain things. I do think maybe, as I said, checking with Alpass. They really
Yeah.
want to be part of the community, but I'm not in favor of raising taxes for sure, especially since we're raising for, a certain dollar amount.
Oh, I understand. I just put it out there
Sure.
as,
Yeah.
and it's something that can be looked at if you
Absolutely.
want to. Actually,
Yeah,
I've
it's options.
prepared the document saying that it was going to stay the same because I assumed it was, but I didn't want to. I want to make sure that we were looking at as many options as we could.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Enough squealing as it is with the enterprise fund.
Absolutely.
When you're talking about the speed enforcement, traffic cameras, and this is more for you guys, this is something new to our community. So it's gonna fall back on you guys,
Yeah, well, and with Waze too, Waze will warn everybody, at least it warns me coming
We're
back.
not used to it, and now all of a sudden, here you got.
One thing the sheriff does is he communicates the speed cameras are located at these intersections, which is required, right?
It's required by law, and everywhere you put them, you have to do a 30-day warning period before you can start issuing citation.
So if you put one, wherever, just right here. And you've got a ton of people going through for the first 30 days, you can't issue tickets?
We can't. Boy, Maryland, it's right now. It's very specific where we can put them. They have to be within a half a mile of the school zone. We've done our studies. We know that out near AMS, I can't tell you the number of violations, but it would shock you the number of violations per hour. And then when you get up to the other way by Grace Lutheran, and then over on Radio Station Road by the high school, you know, their safety programs. Michelle's right. You know, it's new, but it is very well governed by legislation how to handle this.
So they wouldn't get a ticket for those 30 days, or would they get a ticket and it's just a warning?
Yeah, they would just get a warning. There's no fee. It comes in the mail and you would open and read it.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
So
and then Michelle, will you finish?
Just those two and the additional traffic enforcement, if we start that as well, I mean, those are gonna be things that you guys are gonna hear that you're using this to earn revenue. People don't see it as a safety issue, so. I
We
think
get a
that's-
statement with our PIO, we can get a
Yeah, I
statement
think that's
prepared.
very important to do. Go ahead.
And this is personal for me, I'll be upfront. I'm all in favor of speeding enforcement. Cause I've almost been hit and a friend of mine was hit. And I see it every day when I walk. And the feds just released a report that the traffic fatalities are up like 10–14% from the previous year. And so for me, and pardon my blunt, this is a carnage that we need to play a part in stopping it. Because we're running over people, we're killing people because they don't pay attention and they don't drive. And for me, the only way you do that, you gotta change their behavior. And you do that by tickets. And I try to find that there was a report done by NDOT 2 or 3 years ago that documented that it's not, that when you put up traffic cameras and speed enforcement, safety improves and accidents go down. Because people always want to say, well, you just want to raise money. But I mean, some communities do. I don't think that's your intent. And so my intent would be to stop this killing.
Or bringing on a traffic officer that would enforce speeds. I don't anticipate us moving anywhere away from the 25–75% ratio that we have. In the neighborhoods, they use a lot of discretion. The great thing about what we're able to do in Maryland is if you got stopped last week in Kings Grant speeding and the officer stops you or another officer stops you, it pops right up on the computer that the individual got a warning last week. So you're able to go up and go, hey, you got a warning last week, whatever. I don't anticipate those ratios changing. I just having the visibility out there and having somebody making those stops going, hey, you were speeding, here's your warning. I mean, if you're going 20 over and you get a citation and you get your citation. But I understand where Michelle's coming from because new things and people just, it was never that way before. As we grow, traffic safety is public safety.
The numbers are there.
And as we see the legalization of marijuana, if we look at what's going on in the states where that has occurred, traffic fatalities are dramatically increasing.
Well, they want to call me up, that's fine.
We'll direct their calls to Ward 4, is that right?
That's
Ward
okay.
4?
My phone number's out.
So Brent,
That's okay.
what is our next step? So I've heard
I think
that.
we go back and crunch this, the information we've received from you, the feedback we've received from you in the first meeting in May, we can sit back around the table and of course, communicate those numbers to you prior.
I mean, I think the chief is giving you a template.
Yeah.
One
base.
scenario.
Oh, yeah.
So you can do a what if analysis.
But, and I think that there were other suggestions pulled out there that maybe be creative on finding ways to get funding.
And I think also to remember the fallback of, we may be able to very well fund a few of these positions within our, our July 1 financial plan, but then, if we still look at revenues mid-year and
Revenue is the key issue at this point.
see how some of these programs are doing, well, the traffic cameras, we could blow we could end up with twice our assumption. And maybe we consider at that time whether we do add some of these additional positions. And, we're trying to hit a move. It's very, we're in, I don't want to say we're in flux, but, we're in sort of a, I always call it growing pains, because we do have new homes that are going to be coming online. A lot of new homes potentially, which is going to add revenue, which also people living in those homes in Maryland, the personal property or the income tax, shared income tax revenue that we'll also start to capture. Those are additional monies that we potentially could be capturing.
I did read the report for the income tax. They are not expecting it to be as much of an increase as it was in the previous year. They don't expect it to increase. I think they're expecting a 4% increase. 4%. That's the other thing I wanted to mention is regarding salaries. The only thing I have in there is a COLA, which is a 2.99%. There is no merit in these salary numbers.
I was going to ask about that.
Well, we knew it would be here when we did the study.
The 65th percentile.
I mean, if you look at what was budgeted for just salaries and benefits compared to FY22, you guys budgeted 25.7% more than in previous, and this year it's being budgeted 11.7% increase.
Yeah, the 65th percentiles.
I think we shared that.
Yeah.
with the employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Study.
So are you guys looking at trying to fit 2 of the PD positions into this budget?
I think that if you crunch the numbers and come back to us, that's.
If we can build scenarios.
Yeah.
Take that other position out, that eliminates that. So it's really not the 5 positions, it's really 4. When you remove the corporal position.
So are we looking at adding 2, 3, or 4?
No, I'm saying.
I think the chief has questions. He's looking at it.
Yeah, and one of the things Karina and I talked about was last year in part of Governor Hogan's refund the police aid to law enforcement went up dramatically. I don't know, I've called folks that I thought would know and I haven't heard.
Yeah.
And it's gonna remain high, I wouldn't recommend it because that was part of the special program to kind of keep it where we're at. I appreciate Karina and I appreciate that we can have these candid conversations. And it is what it is. We understand that, but I think it's our job as departments to come here and advocate for what we need and maybe provide a possible solution or 2.
Let me go back this much. When you were looking at your projections as such, you had a property tax income that you had this year. How did you project that to the next year? Or did you take the same figure?
Well, so they gave us an assessment amount. And I assumed that you guys were going to keep the tax constant. So it increased by 100, I want to say 8,000 if we kept the rate at 32 cents per 100,000. Because if we kept the yield the same, the rate would decrease. So I did that. And then I added in the 92 homes, assuming that we were going to get that. And that's how I got my amount for property taxes compared to, so FY23's budget was 4,768,000 and I'm budgeting 4,892,000.
Okay. Based upon the assessed value that you have right now.
Plus the 92 homes.
Plus the 92 homes.
Yes.
So you really have not taken, into account as of yet, the, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the damn word. Appreciation that's taking place on our existing homes within the town
Well,
of
that
Plata.
wouldn't affect this budget. It would be in the next budget.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. But my point is, there's going to be more income coming in because of appreciation. What's a good figure? I threw out there 5%, which I think is a reasonable figure, 5% per year.
So when we work on the next year's budget, I would have that information.
And we were shocked on the last reassessment because I think ours only.
And
Yeah, no, it's 25, but you can project that. I know you're trying to balance 24, but if you use fund balance, you can get it back the following years. That's my point.
If
You
we
can
as
use it
departments
temporarily
understand.
and get it back the following years. I know you can finagle ways of saying, well, this is legal, we can do it this way.
I mean, it's not illegal to use fund balance. It's not a best practice, but this is your option. Say, okay, we do come under, we know that we might have tried to get these positions in and the speed cameras may or may not come in. We don't know. But is the council fine saying if it does not come in, you're okay with using fund balance to cover those positions?
How many new positions do we have budgeted for FY 25? Because
We haven't even looked, we haven't even done it for 20.
Yeah, we haven't projected out from the study. We haven't, we haven't started plugging those in yet.
do we know how many we said that we would have? Because again, you're saying.
Yeah, but then there's also void of the,
Right.
right. And that's still void of revenue. It's just, what we needed, what that study showed was what, I guess, comparable localities of our size and complexity, right, are what their staffing levels are and what we need to do to get to those levels. So, we could go in and do we could do a plan for.
We have positions that we were going to put in FY 25. So right now, we need to figure out how to manage the positions we budgeted for FY 24. Because those positions in FY 24 will also be a part of the budget in FY 25. So it's no such thing as, we're gonna have that money that we can put towards it because that's gotta cover something else.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as clear as mud. But I guess we're gonna have to come back and we've got Mr. Manuel who will give you direction to work together and see.
What's the next meeting, May 9th?
Yes, 2 weeks.
Well.
Martha's on there.
Hi, Martha.
Martha's been asleep for 10.
I've not been asleep. I'm actively paying attention. And I would be happy to fill in Karina's absence if needed.
Oh, but we can't see your face to see if you really mean that.
Well, I am in my pajamas, so if we're honest.
We'll work it out.
Yeah.
We'll bring something back so that we have a.
Like I said, we meet
I'll
we
meet
meet on the second Tuesday of the month, but we can also get communications out once those numbers are established, so you guys can provide us feedback individually.
So really, I'm looking at how are we gonna fit at least 2 of the PD positions in?
Yes,
A
that's a good
minimum of
start.
2.
And which positions need to be removed that he's not gonna backfill? Because I think that's key.
Well, the position, I think we need to look at the position count. Even though a position may not be backfilled, we're still 6 positions more than. So I guess we can kind of look at more detail on what positions are going to be filled, but there's still 6 more positions.
The chief would need to close that position, say it's off the books,
Mhm.
never to be
So there's-
resurrected
So we
again
can,
until the next council.
Till FY 25. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Take it off of this.
right now, I'm going to see what are the 2 most important positions that the chief needs and work with him to try to forecast that speed camera revenue to get those positions
To
in the
balance.
budget.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to find out, not that I want you to do any other work, chief, but you gave us those numbers. What was the percentage of not paid? So if they had,
Department can tell us the
yeah.
average percentage. That's not, because the individual was using probably does 30 different agencies photo enforcement in Maryland, so they can give us the average.
Yeah,
They can, and I think it's real good because they can probably tell us, because they do Charles County as well. So I would think our numbers would be very similar in non-payment to Charles County.
Okay, good. All right.
One of the things I was going to point out to council that I didn't say in my report was that we are painting currently Rosewick Tower. So you'll see up there that they are painting Rosewick.
As part of the utility services.
Yes.
Agreement the council.
Are you just painting it the blue again?
I was thinking of a nice fuchsia.
The water tank, the water tower? Nothing like we discussed? No, give me that look. I can see.
You didn't finish this
I can
conversation.
see.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even think we're done yet. We haven't even started. We're only done on 1 memo. We haven't looked at the budget worksheet, honey. Buckle up. doing blue again? We have such a great opportunity. We'll discuss. All right.
Getting late because I was doing.
Okay. I know we all did. All right. Some of us are on vacation. We pulled up from here. All right. What do we have? We're on the budget worksheet now, correct?
We've been on the budget worksheet.
No,
You
we've
guys
only
wanted
done
the
that
memo,
one
which-
memo.
So all these, each budget tab, each tab is for each department. These are what they're requesting for their department.
Okay.
So if you want to start with legislation, we start with
Sure.
them. And actually,
Zero going on.
let me see, where's my total? So on the sheet, there is a total.
Shows request and then proposed. Is that what we're looking at? S&T?
Well, no, you're looking at the proposed. The
Okay.
request was, what I was trying to do is make sure that my numbers were there and then I had the department numbers.
Okay.
Because what I might have forecast may not have been accurate for what they need. So the proposed is what you're looking at. These are what each department is proposing for their budget.
Okay. So we're on legislative.
Yeah. And so legislation, they're proposing needing 453,000, which is a 20% increase. Part of that is for some office equipment. Part of it is for computer equipment. Let's see what else. Whoops. There's the increase in the salaries and I mean, you guys can see all that. So
And is that funding, that is funding the
town clerk,
Clerk.
yes,
Which is already in the budget.
yes.
okay.
So can that be the equipment be deferred?
Well, the equipment I'm having come out of fund balance.
Okay.
It's, if it's blue, it's a capital. If it's purple, it's ARPA. If it's pink, no, if it's purple, it's my one-time operating expense. If it's pink, it's ARPA.
And blue is fund.
Yeah, blue would be fund balance.
Okay.
I had a question about 20% increase. Any opportunity to make that or not?
Well, is Kelly here?
Which line item were you looking at?
The legislative tab, the overall.
You're talking about just the entire
Yeah,
budget,
the
20%.
You started to explain the equipment and some other stuff.
Yeah, so there are sometimes there's notes like there's 2 tablets for, but some of these like, what's in colored is coming out of fund balance, it's not coming out of operating costs. If it's not colored, it's coming out of operating costs. Or it's gonna be offsetting our operating revenues.
So what is the percentage of increase that is operating versus the fund balance? Or the one time, the pink is ARPA, so that wouldn't really count because that's a one, and the blue is fund balance that. And then the pink is one time. So what is the operating expense that will continue? What is the percentage on that?
What was maybe colorblind, so I just had to confirm.
I wouldn't really say it's pink. I would say peach, but that's okay.
Yeah, I see. It's
I was thinking salmon, but.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I mean.
Just so you know, you're working that. Legislative does cover a lot of miscellaneous items, so. Furniture here in the council chambers sometimes will get put into legislative. The MML costs, the registration for that hotel, a lot of that will go in legislative as well. So you'll want to
fund your own projects, same.
We're a partner in crime. aren't you? Yeah, but you look at the percentage increase and like the office equipment was a 1,900% increase. You know, it's only $10,000 though.
And that wouldn't matter.
No, it's
I mean,
competitive.
it's a 17% increase for the,
Versus 20.
yeah.
All right. Any questions, council, on legislative? We've got the 17% increase. Kelly's here and same.
I guess, you know, can stuff be deferred or would it make any difference in the overall budget? Yeah.
Well, the, yeah, so we can't do the salaries unless the person you hire as the town clerk gets a single plan instead of a family plan. Those type of things can affect the budget because that's a huge difference between those plans. And I budget for the family plan because
Worst case
you don't,
scenario.
yeah.
Good.
Let's see.
Afraid that'll make a big difference in the overall budget.
I mean, not, things just went up
Okay.
here and there. I mean, there's some increase in some registrations. There's some increase in attorney fees. There's increases in the salaries. So.
And the one big one was the MHT, the Americans for Trust grant that needs to be completed.
Would that be in here in your legislation or your community budget?
Sorry.
Because your registration did go up $3,000.
I think you're right.
Attorney fees went up to 2,000. Let me do.
And those are just their estimates.
Yeah,
For
well, some of the registration, I like to have people, okay, we know we're like, I know I'm gonna do the GFOA, so I know pretty much exactly what it is. So I have that exact number in. I know it's gonna be both for myself and Martha, so I'm gonna times it. So mine is very specific on, okay, how many conferences am I going to? Well, I know I want to do the GFOA. That's 500. So Martha's.
But it's
probably-
coming out of legislation.
Oh, no, I'm just giving what
Oh,
I do.
okay.
So when I sit with some of the department directors, I'll, if they can give me the, actual amounts, I add those up instead of trying to estimate it, if they know exactly what it is. And that number is exact in the budget for the expenses.
All right, so 17% overall increase, but that is probably the cost of doing business. There's no, yeah, no fat on that. Everyone else good with that? All right, I guess we're going on.
Okay.
Which one next?
Okay, the next one, there's no elections. Correct. So administration, that's Brent's budget.
Okay, and how much of a percentage did that go up?
That went up 11%.
It was all Michelle's.
That's I was thinking it was Michelle, but, oh, sorry. Oh, is my mic on?
Better not be.
All right.
Maybe
That,
that's something that was considered, but not.
all right, any questions
I will say
on,
that there is a $20,000 increase in the town manager's vehicle due to the cost increases on vehicles that we've experienced. It went from 35 to 55, so if you want to cut that, that would be
well,
easy.
balance, that doesn't help them.
I'm just trying to throw them a bone, Karina.
you're just trying to see if we're on our game. It is colored blue, so it is fund balance.
I can drive a smart car.
There you go. All right, and I mean, and there's nothing that's glaring, in my opinion. Does anybody else see
I
anything?
mean, we're seeing across departments are just going up.
Yep.
Inflation is inflation.
the 900% in increase for hospitality. You know that they may say it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but they really don't mean that.
It's gonna be a good year.
Yeah, it is. The cost of doing business is going up. All right, any questions on this one? All right, moving on. Finance next. What is the increase in finance?
Finance is pretty high. Let's see. Oh, 13%. But
Okay,
But you're hiring 2 people.
yes, there are, but those were in the last budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Part of it is, my computer is giving me a lot of problems.
You're about ready to run out of battery.
No, I got plenty of battery. It just,
Budget for Melanie.